Very much for coming to the annual meeting of the Brookline School District, an operation which, as you know, has a $12 million budget and is entrusted with the care and education of 584 Brookline young children from kindergarten to 6th grade. I'd like to start by identifying some of the major players who are here, starting with the Brookline School Board, 5 elected fellow Brookliners who take time out of their busy lives to help shoulder the executive responsibility of running such an enterprise. Chairman Ken Haig, raise your hand or nod your head or wiggle your ears. Vice Chair Karen Jew, Secretary Colleen Mikovich, Member Kelly Zacher, Member Allison Marsano. And we also get to have those amateurs supported by professional administrators in the form of the SAU, not that they need any help, but it's nice to know you guys are there. Superintendent Andrew Corey, Assistant Superintendent Gina Bergskog, Director of Student Services Lauren DeGennaro, Business Administrator Kelly Seeley, thank you very much. You know, I don't see too many unfamiliar faces here. Who's not been to one of these before? Okay, then I'm not going to go through the preliminaries, waste your time telling stuff you already know. Same rules as always apply. Feel free to come up to the mic, that's okay, and say what you want to say. You can make motions to amend. It's kind of a weird deal because maybe you two think in terms of town meeting. We're not doing motions except to amend the article. We're not approving the article. And I know more than once I will fall into that mentality of the town meeting, so just stop me when I go there. After we're done discussing an article, we're not voting on it, we'll just stop talking. Everybody's had their time with it, and then we move on to the next one. And the state of the article as we left it is what will appear in the ballot for Election Day on March 14. So let's start with Article number 1.
Hey, Peter.
Yes?
Introducing the Finance Committee.
Should I introduce the Finance Committee? Yes, I should. These guys, help me.
I'm Brian Rader. I'm the chair. Cindy LaCroix and Tracy Perry.
And thank you very much. I appreciate it. Pardon my rudeness. I've done that many times. Article 1 is ballot issues which are taken up on Election Day, so we're actually going to pass that by. But let me say that on the ballot for the school district treasurer is Robert Rockford. We have a vacancy for school district clerk. No one is running for school district moderator. We have 2 openings in the school board, 3-year terms, and I am delighted to say we have multiple candidates: Tracy Perry, Scott Dickinson, Allison Mannion, and Candace Aiello Cunha. They will be on the ballot, and to those folks, we're kind of close. Please consider a candidate statement to the HollisBrooklineNewsOnline.com so that you can get your word out and get your face out and let people know what you stand for and why you're running, so that you're not just an unknown name on the ballot. I would be grateful if you would do that. And when and if we want to have a candidates forum, we'll get around to it. I'm not sure if that will happen or not. So that is Article 1. So we move on to Article 2, which reads, to see if the Brookline School District will vote to approve the cost of items included in a 3-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the Brookline School Board and the Brookline Teachers Association for 2023, 2024, 2024-25, and 2025-26 school years, which calls for the following increase in professional staff salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. I'm not going to read all those numbers. I trust you can see it. Anybody want me to read it? I'll read it. Moving on then. And further, to raise and appropriate a sum of $241,337 for the first fiscal year, 2023-24 school year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in support staff salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. The school board recommends this Article 5-0. Finance committee recommends this Article 5-0. Net tax impact, 34 cents per $1,000 valuation. I don't ask for a motion at this point as we usually do. I just ask for a proponent on behalf of the school district to come forward and address Article 2, please.
Sure. Article 2 is a professional staff contract. The term is a 3-year contract from 2023-24, 2024-25, and 25-26. It is a Sanbornized contract. The salary grid includes on-step table increases for 31 teachers of 5% in year 1, 4.5% in year 2, and 4% in year 3. For off-step, and by the way, that's 31 teachers, 26 of our teachers are off-step, and in year 1, that would be a 5% increase for them, a 4.5% increase in year 2, and a 4% increase in year 3. For the on-step teachers, the increase represents, indicated in the chart, plus movement of 1 step on the grid, which is 3% between the steps. And for the off-step teachers, the increase is what is listed only in the grid. Chairman Haig and I negotiated over 5 negotiating sessions, approximately, it might have been a little bit more than that, and a full day of mediation in an attempt to find a balance between making our district more competitive with neighboring districts, which data provided indicated that we are not yet there, and also balancing the needs of the taxpayer. So we put a lot of time and effort into this, and we feel that this represents a fair balance of that. The next slide is on health insurance, and this includes information on monthly district-paid insurance premium caps. And our goal with this was to, as health insurance costs increase, to maintain our costs, eventually hoping to decrease. But for a single person, the premium cap is $869 currently. It will remain the same in year 1 and year 2, and in year 3, it will go up to $898. For a 2-person family, the current is $1,570. That would remain the same in year 1. It would go up by $10 to $1,580 in year 2, and in year 3, it would be $1,630. And for a family, the current is $2,053, the same for year 1. For year 2, it would be $2,085, and in year 3, it would be $2,135. And the last slide, I believe it's the last slide. The last slide includes the costs that I just went over combined. So in year 1, the combined total is $241,337. In year 2, it's $287,648. In year 3, it's $289,609 for a total over the 3-year period of $818,594. Ken, I don't know if you want to add anything?
We good, Colleen? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let me then ask for comments from the floor, but there is a statute that says that we are not permitted to amend this article. I didn't make the law, but you can't amend it. So we can discuss it, is all we can do today. So if people would like to get up and tell us what they think or ask questions of the board, please, now's your opportunity. One at a time. Okay. If there's no discussion, we move on to Article 3. Any last chance? Yes, sir, please, be so kind, come up to the mic.
Colleen, you mentioned that
Forgive me, and I should have said, yes, the routine is you say your name and address.
Richard Kuda, 1 Baldwin Drive. You mentioned that in comparison to other counties and school districts that we weren't as competitive. What are those competitive analyses and what do those details look like?
The school, I don't know if Gina, you have more information on it, but I know we were looking at surrounding communities, including Milford, Amherst. Gina, I know there's Bedford, Hollis, the Co-op, Oyster River. So similar districts to us and also a lot of them neighboring districts.
No, that's great that we looked at it, but my question is, how do we not compete with them? How are they more at a competitive advantage than we are?
Their salaries are much higher than ours. And even with these increases, we have not equalized to a lot of them yet, or we will not equalize, but this shows good faith that to our teachers who we support, that we're trying to get there, with the understanding we might not be always able to give this level of increase, but that we're trying.
So with these increases, then, are we saying that they're going to be at a comparable level, or are they still going to be
They're
underneath
going
that
to be,
average?
they will be more comparable, but with some districts, they'll still be lower.
And they'll be comparable 3 years out, or they're still going to be subcomparable?
No, we cannot, we wanted to balance the needs of the taxpayer too. So if we really were trying to make it completely comparable, the increases would have been way more.
So potentially in 3 years, we'll be having the same same song and dance again, right, to make it more comparable?
Every 3 years, we do have to negotiate. We'll see what happens with other districts. Other districts are also in the process of negotiating. Some districts, we found out, have failed in negotiations, which is not what you want when you're a supportive town, for your teachers to not have a contract. So that was our goal, to come out of it with a fair contract. So I can't predict the future, but there may still be inequities, but at least we've made a strong move towards equalizing to some comparable districts.
And do you have an idea of what that total number would look like to make it match or be completely comparable with those districts, or no?
We have data, but again, everything is a moving part, so some districts are in the process of negotiating now. Some have already negotiating and will be negotiated again next year. So do I have that all in my head? No, but I'm sure there's a lot of data that Gina in particular and other members have on paper.
So as they're negotiating now, we could potentially be negotiating this and actually be in the same situation that we're in right now too then, right?
I would hope we wouldn't be in the same situation, because we've given very fair and a little bit larger than normal increases, so that's where we closed that gap. What I'm saying is that we're not going to close the gap with all those districts, and quite frankly, the process of negotiating, we're concentrating on the now. As we all know, anything can change in 3 years, so the best we can do is predict where this will take us for the next 3 years.
I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Further discussion on Article 2? If there's not going to be any further discussion, what will appear on the ballot on Election Day is as it's printed in your text before you. Any last chance? Yes, sir. Got one.
Thank you. Mark Andrews, 35 West Hill. I'm looking back on the academic data, the comparisons between Brookline and the state for mathematics, English language arts, and there was one other metric. Looks like in Brookline, for each one of those metrics, for each one of those grade levels, Brookline exceeds the state average with the current pay scale. When we look at cost and performance,
Where are you looking? Where are you referring to?
I'm looking back on academic data. Let's see, this is,
Are they paginated? Does it have a page number?
it looks like the third page. and fourth page.
And what was your question?
So with the heavy black line, that is math, Brookline, with the dashed lines, that's the state. For all categories, for all grades, currently, Brookline exceeds the state average based on the current pay scale.
That looks like that, yes.
Can you quantify a performance increase with the new salary increase?
Can we quantify it? Mathematically, I'm not a mathematics person, but in a more broad sense, I would like my children to continue to learn like this, and I would like to support the teachers that are helping us excel in that way. If you're asking me to do some sort of percentages, we don't do that. I did not do that.
Is it accurate to assume that if salaries remain equal, performance will still continue to exceed state average?
No, we will have teachers likely leaving us to go to other districts. We will bring in then new teachers who take often 3 years to grow. We will have more administrative needs to train those teachers, which takes away from other issues. So my guess, having experience in education, is absolutely not. You want to support your teachers who are doing a good job. And if they can go to the town over and make much more money than they make here, they may. And history shows they will.
We didn't necessarily have it in this packet, but we have done the comparison with those same towns that we use as peers,
Is that sound being carried?
what their cost per pupil is.
Put that
and-
mic closer to her, Ken, please.
I'm really close.
No, that,
Okay. And that wasn't in this packet, but I know we've seen comparisons with Bedford, with the Souhegan School District, and their cost per pupil versus ours is higher generally, and our scores are in line with those districts that we use for comparisons for salary. So in all of those exceed the state standard, but I think we all strive for the higher standard than just the state average.
Thank you.
thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Ed Perry, 4 Muscatannabus Road. I'm very excited to hear that our averages are so good, and I'm very excited that this board decided to take the time to take a look into today's employment climate and take into consideration such things as inflation and market value adjustments that are happening across the board in every sector of employment. I wonder if the board had a chance to quantify this, maybe not. I know in general employment, it's widely accepted that when you have an employee leave, the cost to a company is generally about 33% of that person's salary, and that doesn't take into consideration the breakage. When you have to start over with someone, the experience loss, the relationships that they might have. Would you find that that 33% is about comparable to the cost that we could expect if we were to lose people? And have you had a chance to consider the breakage of having to start with brand new people all the time? Because people, it's my understanding that we have quite a few school districts that are pretty close. So I'm imagining this is something that you guys have had some time to think about.
Again, we don't quantify it numerically necessarily, but that was part of the discussion, that when you have to train a new person, they need a lot of supervision and oversight. When things go well, it's great. When they don't, there's even more time, which time is money with school districts. So we don't have a hard and fast number like the business world might, but it's really, you know, we want to keep administrator costs down too, to the extent we can, while also keeping our kids safe. So it's that fine balance of continually, when you have a lot of new teachers in a building, it takes up a lot of time from an administrator perspective, and from other teachers who, even though they don't necessarily get paid to do this, are constantly mentoring their peers. So right now we have a balance, it seems like, of newer teachers and more experienced teachers, but if the balance goes the other way, it does end up costing in many different ways.
Thank you.
Colleen, one other thing I think it's important to add is this summer, we had a lot of feedback from the community around resourcing, resource profiles, how we're supporting our staff and our teachers. And you're going to see it here, and that we've pulled that thread in the negotiations for the contract. You're going to see it in Article 3 when I go through that as well, or Article 4, whatever the next one is on the operating budget. But I don't see a lot of the faces from the summer, but we had 3 or 4 different sessions where there was a lot of community feedback talking about resourcing and staffing and supporting our schools. And we heard that feedback loud and clear, and that's part of this too. So I want to make sure that we identify that now. I'll identify it again, and we'll continue to talk about that because the feedback we've received throughout the year was around supporting our teachers, supporting our staff, and to do that, it does cost money to resource, and that's what's reflected in the budget as well.
Yes, sir.
Brady Halligan, 17 Birch Hill. Just a comment, if you torture numbers long enough, they will confess to anything. So do recall when you're looking at statewide statistics that our region is not the state as a whole. We tend to skew a little bit higher due to competition, salaries to the south, numerous other factors. So keep that in mind when considering numbers and comparing them to other parts of the state. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Allison Mannion for Macintosh. I just want to thank the negotiating team for everything you've done to support our teachers. As somebody who's been in public education as an educator for 17 years, I've watched teachers leave because of stalemates. I've watched them leave to go to districts with higher pay, and I very closely watch the crisis in this country of public school teachers leaving by the droves. I'm very tied into that network, and I see a lot of transitioning teachers. I have 2 children in this town. I want them exceeding standards at all levels. I want to make sure that our teachers are supported, and this contract gets them close, like we said, and I think we need to constantly show to them in good faith so we retain them and we retain that excellence in the classroom, that we continue to support them, and that we show them that we are behind them in every way, including this contract. So thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Dennis? You got to sit closer, man.
Hey, I'm Dennis Skay, 54 Averill Road. What is the attrition rate? We're talking about that. What is that rate per year? Do you have that average?
I don't know the attrition rate offhand. I know it seems to me that every meeting that we have, we do have some attrition, whether it's through retirement or it's through leaving or it's through situations where it just didn't work out after training. So
Okay.
that was a big topic that was talked about in our May meeting last year.
Okay, because the conversation is about attrition, but we don't know what that number is. But we just know it's high. Or
We
just-
are preventing attrition by hopefully putting out a reasonable contract that's well balanced. We have had some attrition of senior staff recently, senior teachers and newer teachers. In a smaller district, I don't have the number offhand, but it seems to me as a newer board member that it's not only a current issue, but more so when we're looking for the next 3 years, a contract issue of knowing that people can go elsewhere and comparing that to other communities nearby.
Yeah,
So that's,
well, people can always leave a job because of money, but that's not always why they leave. That's not
correct.
why they stay. But it would be nice to know what the attrition rate is if that's what we're voting on to keep that from happening, which if nobody knows that, what am I
I don't
voting
have the
for?
data to look that up, but I don't know
Okay.
if we can get that. The other piece is that people do leave for other reasons, and later Chairman Haig, Ken will be talking about some solutions we have that are more administrator support in that. So we are well aware that people leave for multiple reasons, and right now we're lacking in a few ways that we're trying to make up for.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further discussion on Article 2? Okay, so if no one is going to talk further, that will appear on the ballot in that form as it is in your written material. Closing under 2, we move forward to, guess what, number 3, which reads, "To see if the Brookline School District will vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session," this occasion, "for the purposes set forth herein totaling $11,283,450. Should this article be defeated," meaning on election day, if it's a no, it's a yes, no at the polls. You don't amend stuff. "Should this article be defeated, the default budget will be $11,125,878, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the school district or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 401310 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The school board recommends this Article 5-0. Finance committee recommends this Article 3-0. Estimated net tax impact, $10.57 per $1,000 of valuation. Would someone on the board like to address Article 3, please?
Okay, that'll be me. All right, so get this close enough. The table above here shows where we started from last year. That's the approved budget that the town passed. You can see our budget and the delta of $758,000, which is a 7.2% increase from last year. What's listed below are the new items. So these are new that were never in the budget before. You can see that, well, the next slide is going to talk about what the major changes are. So there's not a lot new, I think, is the important takeaway here driving the delta increase. And these came from 4 to 5 months worth of rounds of looking at our budget. As Superintendent Corey's talked about and throughout the cycle, we start with a wish list. The staff comes forward with that, and then those budgets are looked at and reduced throughout the cycle. So there's different sections around staff, around equipment, around facilities, et cetera, that drive the change in budget and some of the new proposals that you'll see. So you can see here there's some computer equipment replacement. That's one of the newer things where we have a rotating basis on computers for the students. Software, some of these are pretty small when you look at the size of the budget. Special ed personnel is going to be the biggest driver, and we'll talk about that on the next one too, as far as new line items. So why don't we go to the next one if we could. So this is where the major changes are from last year. And I think it's important to spend a moment here and recognize two key pieces. First is special ed increases from last year. It's a roughly $300,000 increase. That is a federal mandate that's built into the budget instantly. So that's driving already half of that increase that you saw in our 7.2% number. The second piece here, and I mentioned it when I spoke up on Article 2, is that curriculum administrator, MTSS administrator. There was heavy feedback around support for our principals and having another person to help with some of the disciplinary issues, some of the curriculum that goes through K through 6, and helping with collecting some of the IEP type information. And for several years, we've talked about adding this position, but because of the budget cycle, we've held off out of concerns for the impact. But with this year's climate and the feedback we received, we felt it was important to add it. So that line in there is that $110,000 figure that you see. When we look at operating budget as opposed to default budget, this is one of the biggest differences. So if we, as a town, didn't want to move forward with this curriculum administrator, the default budget would essentially, with a couple other cuts, cover that. So I call those two line items out because that's the major increase from last year that's driving what you see here. The last two line items are the other pieces. Heating got more expensive. We all felt it. We're all feeling it this winter, and we saw a roughly $60,000 increase from last year in the cycle just because of heating. And then the bond for the RMMS renovation kicks in this year. So that's what's being completed this month and will roll out with the expansion of classrooms and some of the special services down in the basement that's been going on. So that's what's driving the delta from last year to this year.
Ken, could I add one thing?
Please.
I just wanted to add, when we're talking about the curriculum administrator position, that we balance the need for that position with the, taking away the regular ed MTSS paras. So we knew we were putting an addition in and we wanted to balance there. The reality is it's very hard to find para educators right now. Last I checked, we were operating without many of them that we needed. So this was, again, us trying to balance the needs of the community with the needs of the schools.
Thanks. Okay, so this is a summary now of the default budget. So I just mentioned that it's fairly similar. The delta.
Would you take a couple of minutes to explain what a default budget is?
I would be happy to. We had it in one of ours, not in here though. Okay, so the default essentially is the operating budget from last year. And then, well, this table kind of can help me walk through it. It's the operating budget from last year. And then you can see there are requirements by law or contracted increases that are built in, that are added into the default budget that will carry over year. So that's about, well, that's $656,268. So right away we have the 10.5 plus the 656,000 that are part of that operating budget that are built in. It subtracts some of the expenses that were one-time type expenses, which you see in FY23, which was this current operating cycle right now, which is roughly 56,000, and you get to the default budget line item, which you see down at the bottom is the 11.1 million.
So forgive me, you guys probably knew this, it took me years to know this. If the budget as proposed is defeated, you by default have the default budget, which will apply to your school.
Thank you. Yep. So that's a $157K delta. Well, I'll give you the exact number. $157,573 difference between default and operating. And that's a 1.4% delta between the two. So when you think about what we showed on the major changes before and the $300K that are required for the special ed increases, the default budget is only $157K difference. So we are going to be eating a little bit into that. So that's where I talked about some of those cuts that would be required. But primarily it's that $110,000 line item for the curriculum coordinator. Okay.
Ken,
Yep, please.
I just wanted to provide the clarification that sometimes when we talk about a curriculum coordinator, a term that people might be more familiar with is a vice principal. And so even though the title is curriculum coordinator, this would essentially be a vice principal that would be shared between our two elementary schools and would provide support to Principal Molinari and Principal Boulay. And we were able to use some ESSER funds, I think, to bring in somebody, Mr. Woulette, who retired from the high school, to come sort of help fill some of those gaps this year on a contracted basis. And from talking with the principals, it's been invaluable to have that additional administrative assistance, even on a part-time basis. And so we really, I think sometimes when we use words like curriculum coordinator, it can be hard to sort of operationalize what that means, but it's an assistant principal or vice principal that would share their duties over both schools.
Okay, So this is the last piece before we take questions. This is the FY24 operating budget details that breaks down some of those required by law section. That was the $656,268 figure. So you can see wages, benefits, that's the end of the current cycle of the teacher's contract, which we just went over for the follow-on cycle, but $129,940 increase there. Special ed services, you can see that special ed drives a lot of the budget. These are important funds that we need to use and we have to use. The health, dental, FICA, NHRS, that's part of the teacher contract. That's the fringe benefits that come along with salary for employees. The regular ed transportation's our bus contract that we have. And of course, the bond payment that I just mentioned. And then you can see there's a catch-all for small amounts on the line item for the last 5K. So that's the requirement over and above the operating budget from FY23 that we talked about, driving that $11,125,878 figure for the default budget. So that's everything from our presentation. We're happy to take questions for those that have them. I do want to I guess I'd reiterate too one more time. So we did start this cycle last September. We've met on this every month and worked down the budget. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone up here that we feel like this is a tough year as far as the increases, and we recognize that. But you could, like we talked about on new ads, there's not a lot that's new that's been added here, and I just want to really make sure we emphasize that this is, aside from the curriculum coordinator that we've talked about, that's really the primary large new addition. And like I mentioned, that's started in the summer this past year and was a theme throughout the year around resourcing and supporting our staff. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Eric Power, Westview Road. I'd like to make a motion to amend. I want to amend the proposed budget to a new number of $10,165,028.
Say the number again, please.
$10,165,028.
So that's 10165,028.
That's correct.
Thank you. Do we have a second to the gentleman's motion? We have a second. Discussion on the motion?
I'd like to speak to this motion. We skipped over this at the beginning of the presentation, but everything that's being proposed here is going to raise the property taxes for the Brookline School District by 20%, actually a little more than 20%. Taxpayers just can't afford it. I know it's something that people think we have to do, but a 20% tax increase is just too high. And by amending this warrant article for the proposed number, we give voters on election day a choice between the 10.2 million and the 11.1 million, and they can decide which one they want to support. There aren't many warrant articles that we can modify to adjust this really high tax hike. I'm still not convinced that we're following the tax cap of 8% when we're getting a tax impact increase of 20%. And I think a lot of the people here support me in this, and we'll have to just make do with it because we can't afford these kinds of high taxes. The co-op is going to go up 15%. The town is going to go up 14% if we let those go through. We can't take 20% here. So I would just urge for you to support this motion to amend, to give the voters a choice on ballot day, whether they'll support, the difference between the default budget and the proposed budget here is only $157K. So it's almost the same number, but we'll give voters a chance to choose if they want to spend this much money. Thank you.
Hey, Eric, can you stay at the microphone? I'd like to ask you a question if I could. You've proposed $1 million cut, and I'd like to understand where that's coming from the budget. We just went through all of the things. I'd really like to understand what we're sacrificing at $1 million.
It's not my job to
No,
tell
no,
you
no,
that.
we've spent 5 months doing this, so I'd like to hear analytically what you are proposing removing for $1 million out of this budget.
You will probably have to have a few less teachers, would be my guess. Maybe not as many administrators. That includes, the number includes, keeping the tax impact to about 5%. We just can't take it. I mean.
So you don't have an answer is what you're telling me. You're just throwing a number up.
I'm not throwing a number up.
Gentlemen, one at a time, and don't interrupt each other.
I can come up with a detailed plan on that, but we have to live within the means of this community. This community is not really able, I don't think, to take a 20% tax increase, a tax impact. We pass a tax cap. We want that to keep our taxes up to 8%. That's pretty generous. So I will let the voters decide. That's my motion. Thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
No answer there.
So for the rest of the guys in line, we're talking about the motion to amend. Thank you. Please.
I'm down here. Hi, I'm Jessica Hartman, 51 Mountain Road. I just want to speak against the motion that is on the table right now to decrease the total operating budget. I want to take a moment to thank the board for all of their hard volunteer hours that I frankly have not given. So I appreciate all of the hard work that you do. And I also think the number of the original $11,283,450 sounds like it came from very prudent sitting and focusing on what we would need in order to take care of our students, as well as really thinking about me as a taxpayer and what that's going to affect on our bottom line. And so I appreciate that time and that prudence that I can truly see in this work that you have done. So I appreciate that. By moving to the motion that Mr. Power is talking about, we are asking this board to go back and go to our teachers and contracts that we already have. I don't see how that would help or happen. And it also doesn't speak to the community with the requests that they have that we need more help in our schools to help our principals, to help our students who are really still suffering post-COVID, to be very honest, and trying to come out of this very difficult time and need that emotional support. And so I think that the original, I'm not in favor of this amended version of the operating budget, and do support the very prudent number that was originally proposed by the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Scared me for a second there. Ed Perry, 4 Muscatanaps Road, still. I'd like to speak in opposition to the amendment. I remember looking at the original budget amount and seeing something that looked a lot like the inflation amount, so it really wasn't all that surprising to me. In fact, I thought that if you'd come up with a number under inflation, I'd try to see if I could invest some money with you folks and hope you weren't going to Bernie Madoff me. I just don't think it's realistic to take a look and say, let's try to have the same outcomes and maintain the quality that we have now and try to decrease the budget underneath inflation. I'd also add, as just a little bit of table setting, a conversational thing that really sticks in my craw sometimes. We make this distinction as if there's 2 camps in town, right? Parents and taxpayers. I'm one of those rare people. I'm both. And I'm not all that rare. So when we talk about taking both sides into consideration, often we're talking about the same people. And I'm always impressed by the intelligence of the people of Brookline, their resourcefulness, their ability to get into the details. And when I see a majority of people show up year after year at town meetings in full support of our schools and the things that we need, asking for more resources for our schools, I know they're smart enough to know that we're not pulling that out of the air. It's not rainbows and unicorns and magic tricks. They know it's going to be an increase in their taxes. And it's a price that they're willing to pay for not just the benefit of the children, but for the benefit of the country. Because our children and our country are competing with people who are being educated all over the world. And elsewhere, they're not talking about taking the foot off the gas. They're pressing down on the accelerator, and they're going to speed right past us. and I don't know a whole lot of people that are interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Peter Walker, 57 Pepperell Road. I am in support of Mr. Power's amendment. Disposable incomes for households are down $5,000 annually over the last 2 years, 21 months of decline in real wages. And we're not just a school district, we're a community. We're something even greater than that. The proposed budget is not really sustainable for taxpayers, and I appreciate a counter proposal, and I hope it will be supported. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Brady Halligan, 17 Birch Hill Road again. Question for the board. To get a $1 million cut in the budget, which would be, what, 10%, how many teachers would we have to fire, approximately?
I mean, were you about to, I was doing in my head, we call it $100,000 with loaded between wage and fringe. So you're talking 10 teachers.
Okay. And what
across
kind of
the
impact
board?
would that have on class size?
I'm sorry?
What kind of impact would that have on class size?
Well, we'd be in violation of our class size policy. We'd be looking at cutting at least one teacher in every grade, which would absolutely increase class size and go against, quite frankly, what the population supports around class sizes. I remember when there was discussion around class size policy, the amount of emails we received in favor of it was quite a few. So this would be a significant impact. And again, without hearing a plan of how we're going to get there, we just lob teachers, and that's at least 10, because as we talked about, there's baked-in increases that are federally required. So it may even be more than 10 teachers when you add in the special ed requirements that are federally mandated.
So would this proposed budget even comply with federal and state law?
I mean, we would have to support those special ed, so we would be looking at cutting regular ed and cutting teachers is essentially where it would have to come from.
Okay, thank you. Oppose the amendment.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, Abe Hartman, Mountain Road. So the budget last year was 11.1, is that correct?
Budget last year was 10.5, I believe.
Okay, so the 11.1 is a...
The 11.1 is our default budget, 10.5 last year, 11.1 for the default, and then 11.2 was what we proposed as the overall budget.
Okay, so 700,000, so about the 7% increase.
Correct.
On this part of the budget overall, okay. I just wasn't sure where 7% versus, the comment on 20% came from. So, I mean, if that could be clarified, at some point, that would be appreciated. But thanks for the clarification on last year's budget.
Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Ryan Power from 12 SU Drive. I wanted to move the question forward.
Pardon me?
I wanted to move the question forward. Or end debate.
Yeah, I've got to digest into the SB2 context. We don't, okay, that's fine, that's appropriate. Thank you. Does the gentleman have a second for ending discussion? He has a second. All those in favor of ending discussion, raise your voting cards. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your voting cards. It's a let's do it again without the delay. All those who want to cut off debate, a discussion, raise your voting card, please. Thank you. All those who want to keep talking, raise your voting card, please. We got to count them. I think I know the outcome, but we got to count them. So, Brendan, would you be so kind as to count this side of the room? Dan, how are your math skills? Would you count that side? Okay, all those who want to end discussion, raise your voting cards now, high, and keep them up. Okay, what do you got? You want to do it again? If you're not sure, we'll do it again. 22, pardon me, you have 22? And you have 22? No, 22 total. Total, okay, thank you. All those who want to keep talking on this proposition, raise your voting card, please. Thirty-two to keep talking and enlightening each other. So the motion to cut off debate is defeated. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I'm very short. Johanna Shriver Halligan, 17 Birch Hill Road. I maybe didn't see this number, but can someone tell me exactly how much in taxes we would be paying for this new budget? Like, what's the increase just in taxes? I might have missed it.
I
have
think
a
the
lot going.
first slide had that there.
I think it's slide 12. Slide 12, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, we jumped right into articles. Are you asking about overall?
Yeah, just overall, like how much, like dollar-wise, do we know, like per like $1,000 maybe?
So all of our warrants, let's see. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding. Are you asking about this particular warrant or all 10 or all 8 warrants?
Just this one.
This
Yeah.
one, thank you.
Yeah,
Just want to make sure. So it's 10.57 for $1,000 or for a home. So it's hard to know based on your home property value. So, but that's the multiplier effect.
Okay, perfect.
So, but the overall, it's $11,283,450 for a total bottom line.
Yeah.
For what we've proposed, the default is $11,125,878,000. And then I didn't get Mr. Powers' total, but it was call it 10.2 million, I think roughly was what it was. That's on the floor right now.
Okay, perfect. So definitely opposing this motion. My daughter just started school this year, and she is in preschool, and there's only one preschool teacher. So I'd really like to not cut the only program that is teaching my daughter how to talk and giving her communication skills that are valuable and necessary, and saving my sanity so she stops throwing things at me when I don't understand what she's saying. You know, and I think it's important to I do understand both sides, but I do think it's important to remember at the end of the day that, yes, we're not, I think someone said it earlier, we're parents and taxpayers, right? And we want our kids to have the same opportunities that other kids had. And, you know, she's benefited from the paras, and she's benefited from having the supervision in the class. All of those things are important. My brother's right over there, dangling a magazine. He's benefited from special education his entire life. I don't think you can just say, let's cut some here, cut some here, cut some here, without really examining that and the impact that would have long-term and the ripple effect. So just putting that out there as well, that there's benefits that come later in life too, and that these are important now. And yes, I understand taxes suck and that they go up and that sucks, but you know, people who are maybe not having children in school as well, like you had opportunities and your children were cared for and taught and educated, and our children would like the same opportunity. We would like that same opportunity for our children, and we want to pay the teachers what they're worth, and we want to pay the paras what they're worth, and we want to give the schools the support because that's necessary and important for us to build a positive generation going forward. So definitely in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Casey Petronellis, 7 Smith Road, Brookline. I was just looking at page 2 about the special education percentage of enrollment for both special education and the 504 students. Would you say that enrollment has increased since the last year in special education enrollments?
I would say it's a slight increase. I don't want to say it's been exponential, but it is definitely up.
Okay. I mean, I know from experience, having a child on the spectrum, he at one point was nonverbal, and he made exponential improvement here in the Brookline School District. I'm sad to say that at this point we're considering paying for private school, and no fault to the district. I think they are already short-staffed. Their caseloads are increasing. I know case managers have a huge workload. So I think this would negatively impact the school district. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a government employee. I pay taxes just like everybody else, and now I'm considering having to pay private school. So I oppose this.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to the board for all you do.
Yes, sir.
Tom Rogers, 8A Lewis Drive. I have a question for the board. We talked about short staffing, and I know from being married to the preschool teacher that I hear about a lack of paras on a regular basis. And how short are we on paraprofessionals in Brookline?
I'm trying to pull up our last packet while we're talking here. I know we had the 4 MTSS pairs. It's 4? Okay. Thank you. So it's
we're
4
short.
and 4, right? Yeah. Okay.
Would you repeat it, please?
So the answer is 8 total.
We have 8 total or short total?
We are short 8 total.
We're short 8 total. So we're talking about, this motion is talking about lopping off $1 million without detailing where that $1 million is going to come from, which could result in what you just mentioned is approximately, and I think a fair estimate, of 10 plus teachers, at least 10 teachers. And I hope we're not seriously considering being 8 short from a para standpoint where we don't have enough support to cover our classrooms as it stands, and then pulling out of thin air a budget that's $1 million less without backing that up with detail to support the logic behind it. So I'd like to thank the school board for doing their due diligence and working so hard over, I think, 5 months, you said, to come up with a logical budget. I think we all agree that we'd love to see our taxes go down, but not at the expense of seeing the children's education suffer. And I'll say that as a parent of a freshman at UNH. Our child has gone through the schools. She's no longer there. She had a wonderful education here, and it's because we invested in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just point people, I don't know if everyone has looked through all of the information that's on the SAU website to prepare for this, but it's the document entitled FY24 Budget Detail for New Items, Round 4.1, which is where we are now. And as Chairman Haig said, this has been a 5-month process. And when we look at personnel requests, so the building administrators at the start of this process think about what really do they need in terms of personnel to meet all the needs in terms of classroom teachers, special ed resources, bus monitors, playground coverage, so teachers can use that time to prep. We started out with like a request of $316,000 in round 1, and that got whittled down to $13,000 of requests for new personnel that's in this budget. So I do ask you to look at this document that kind of steps through each of the 4 budget cycles that we went through to see how much we have already stripped out. We have stripped out a new playground for CSDA. We've stripped out smart boards and computers and resources to help our teachers use their time and their expertise with our children more effectively to get this number down to really the bare bones. There's no room left to cut, and we've cut everything that we felt like we reasonably could. And so I do commend that document to you. That resource is there for you to use as a guide for what we've been through to get to this point.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mark Christensen, Flint Meadow Drive. And I'd like to confirm, this 7%, is this year on year?
7% from our last year cycle.
From
yes.
last year?
Correct.
Okay. I don't know anyone who's working for a living who's getting more than 7% this year than last. Whatever the details are, We have to live within our means. We can't just expand this forever. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dennis Skay, Averill Road. This is, in 2004, I'm going to go back and do this here. We were in, the economy was like it is right now, pretty slipping, and I proposed a football team at the high school. There wasn't a football team. And they didn't, of course, I almost ran out of town, you know, and very expensive sport. But I formed a 501c, and people who really felt compassionate about that donated money. So the first year we raised $500,000. Next year we raised another $500,000. So the people in this town may have money. Okay, there may be a tax break to give money towards these things that you just budgeted and had to cut. And I would propose later on, I know this is a bill here that, and I can see where Eric's coming from, because I don't really want to have to pay taxes. Nobody wants to pay taxes. But I'd like to contribute my money someplace where I think it would be beneficial. So that would be, to me, to set up programs that we can give money for computers, give money for all these different programs that you would just tax somebody, because whatever you're doing for a budget, you can take a line item and move the money around, because that's what you'll do this year. That's what you do every year. Okay, as long as you put $1 aside, allocate it, you can move money around. So although your budget seems tight, you're going to be juggling money all year long, and I'm pretty sure that's why you hire the administrators. They don't stick to a line budget and hold that, and that's not the way it works. So again, we don't run like the federal government. We spend as we go, but we also can contribute money, and I think that's an idea I'd like to expand upon later on. But I'm all for doing that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Not that tall. Ed Perry, 4 Muscatanapas Road. I've got a question. So one of the things I'm interested in is when I hear this idea that we might have to let 10 teachers go. Generally speaking, that's going to trigger an atmosphere change. Other people are likely to go as well. I mean, this is something anybody who's ever owned a business knows. It's not rocket science. You start losing employees, then other people have to step up to the plate, and now all of a sudden they're doing 2, 3 other people's work for the same pay that they made last year. Not a good business model. People are going to start walking out the door. How easy is it right now to go out and fill these positions? Is this a very quick process right now?
It is a somewhat impossible process to fill, particularly the positions that are unfilled right now. It is not an easy process, and I'm talking about experience here and also experience in the school district I work in, to fill positions for special ed teachers in particular. There's going to be a lot of competition for positions right now. There's a lot of teachers leaving the field, so it's difficult. And what we're proposing would be a disaster for that.
A secondary question, if I may. When you have someone who's been on board for a while and maybe they were hired in a different climate, is it potentially likely that we're going to see a situation that we see in many other instances now, where people who are trying to fill positions at companies are asking for a lot more than people who work there currently? Because when I hear this idea of saving money, I'm interested in it. I've got 2 kids. They're 5 and 7. That means I'm broke. You have kids 5 and 7, you don't have a lot of money. So, I'm not Scrooge McDuck. I'm not swimming through gold piles of money. But, so I do want to save money. I do want to be cautious with what we spend, but I want to be smart about it. And I'm trying to think about the logical way that we're going to save money by slashing money out of the budget, firing a bunch of teachers, and then having to rehire a bunch of people at a higher wage in a new atmosphere. So for the salary piece, are we likely to be able to hire people for maybe lower than what we're paying people now, or might that be as unrealistic as it sounds?
So slashing the budget by $1 million is going to create such chaos that no one is going to want to work in the schools.
Doesn't sound like a good way to save money.
We will see increases in behaviors. One thing that is prevalent in all academic studies is the importance of class size. We will become a different district over time, and it's not in a favorable way. So that's all I can answer. I mean, I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but we're unlikely to be able to attract teachers to a district that is going downhill in a disastrous way where we're cutting 10 teachers. What person wants to take a job in a district that just cut 10 teachers? No one, because they know they'd be on the chopping block next for a town that doesn't support them.
Sounds like a pretty heavy price tag. Thank you.
It's a heavy price tag mostly for our children.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Mark Andrews, 35 West Hill. I'd like to address the question about where the 20% came from. There was a chart that you showed earlier that showed the overall BSD impact. It was a spread. There you go. Right back. One more. I know we kind of blazed through that pretty quick. I did some simple math as well, but I'm looking at the overall BSD tax rate, bottom right-hand corner. There's the impact. I'll leave that up there for a few seconds. I'm in support of this measure.
So just to address that, that includes all of the proposed warrant articles, not just the not just this budget. So it would include any of the special ed budget, warrant articles. So that's like, if none of that gets approved, it changes the rate as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you for putting this slide up. I had talked about 20%. I wasn't making that up. If we pass everything as proposed, we're looking at everybody's taxes just for the school district to going up to $12.74 per thousand. That's $2.13 per thousand for every taxpayer. And this proposal is just an option on the ballot on March 14th, because you will have the default budget. People could, if they really want to spend that money, the voters can speak on that day or by absentee ballot. That's the beauty of SB 2. So they can weigh in on it if they want to keep spending the money. Having these two numbers that are only $157K apart really doesn't give voters a chance to make a choice. And I'd like to know, we adopted an 8% tax cap under RSA 32.5B, which says our taxes cannot go up more than 8%. The tax effort cannot go up more than 8%, and we're going up 20%.
Is that it, sir?
Is there a question to
That's
that?
a question to the school
I'm
board.
sorry.
Okay,
They're the
my
ones that
answer,
propose the budget.
because we're saying quietly, we have to take the whole table into account. You've taken out the revenue piece too, that adds to that 20%. Now, the bottom line impact is a 7.2% increase. You can do whatever you want with numbers. You're taking out the revenue piece, which is a problem we can't solve.
The RSA is very clear. You take all the appropriations.
Eric, I already sent to you that we had our legal team look at it. I don't have another answer to you. We have legal guidance that allows for it.
We have an attorney.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir, would you like to contribute to the conversation? This gentleman is a lawyer who specializes in such things. All those in favor of permitting him to speak, raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just for clarification on the statute, for the local tax cap, the percent increases on the amount of tax, not the rate of tax.
It's the total amount that you raise. You cannot raise more than 8% from the previous year.
That's correct, on the operating budget.
It's not just the operating budget. In RSA 32, it talks about the budget and it says all appropriations. That's the key thing that was missed there. I know we have a difference of legal opinion on this, but that's the intent of the intent in the language of RSA 32 is that we don't get a 20% tax increase if a supermajority had passed an 8% tax cap. That's the problem here. We're going to be getting into some legal challenges, I think, here with going with this 20% because I don't think it's right. And I've voiced that to the school board and you proceeded anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'd like to
Appreciate it.
address that because you voiced it and I provided you the detail of how it got to it. Your question was answered. You just didn't like the answer.
Well, folks, I don't like this tone of this conversation. We have two different legal opinions. He subscribes to one, someone over here subscribes to two, and you're not going to reconcile it. Enough said on that. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Brian Rader, still at 31 Mason Road. So I just wanted to address the technical question. A couple of people have asked before, it's like, well, if it's a 7% increase in the budget, why would the taxes be going up more than that? So I want to kind of, in this chart is perfect for that. Because your taxes are not just the expenses here, but there are other revenues. So we have these expenses, but we have other revenues, and it's whatever is left over after those revenues that actually goes to taxes. So you can see up here, there's local revenue, which in the previous year was 1.2 million, and now they're projecting 887,000. So that's a 400,000, 300 and some odd $1,000 reduction in revenue. So that in itself affects your tax rate significantly. You can also see like the state aid grant going down a couple of $100,000. The retained state tax goes up a couple of $100,000. They mostly balance each other out, but still overall each year we continue to see declining support from the state government. Those pay for a significant part of the overall budget, but those revenues are going down, and that increases your taxes regardless of the fact of the expense of the operating budget itself. So that's kind of why there's a difference there between it. So I just wanted to make people aware of that it's not completely funded with local taxes. There are other revenue sources as well.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Abe Hartman, Mountain Road. One comment I usually hear at this meeting and also at the co-op meeting is about, about the attrition and can we not, what teachers would leave, do we really need to pay them X amount, et cetera. Well, my understanding is, at least at the co-op, there are positions that haven't been filled, and when I checked on that, I was told we haven't received a resume for that position yet this year for a teacher. I mean, we basically have had to do without that teacher. I don't know how we would ever fill the teacher positions if they're cut, but whenever I've heard that over several years that, they're going to be here because we have good kids and la-di-da, it doesn't work like that all the time, especially if they can walk to Massachusetts or drive 35 minutes to another district. I saw this at where I grew up because it was a competition between Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, and the state refused to allow that district to pay more. Or when we were right beside it, you could walk across the border and make twice the money. So we lost teachers left and right and could never replace them. So, it is a consideration to think of that we do have these openings, we're not filling them, and it is a drain on the system. My daughter specifically is missing out on a certain class because they have an extra study hall right now because they don't have that teacher. So, I don't know how people can consider, I can understand how people consider cutting the budget, but we need to make sure we pay attention to what we cut, how we cut. So I'm against this proposal, obviously, but if it does pass, I just encourage voters to think clearly on how they vote, and not just put yes if they think they're voting for what they would be a higher budget to cover the schools when it does come to the day of voting. Thank you.
To that point, it'd be good to remind everyone what happened in the Croydon School District in New Hampshire, which made national news. At the deliberative session, the budget was slashed on the floor. People went to vote at SB2 and didn't know what they were voting for, and their school was looking at putting all of their kids in pods and being given educational content via remote instruction because they didn't have the staff, because they had to make drastic cuts because it was not budgeted. There was no plan for that massive decrease, but the number felt good at the ballot. So that's drama we don't need. This is a well thought out budget as it is. So just keep that in mind. We don't want to make the news.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Casey Petronalis, 7 Smith Road. So another resident had alluded to money being moved around between funds. So my question to the school board is, are there fenced funds in this budget? Like, you can't just move money around from one pot to another. I'm guessing you can't move money from the special ed pot into a miscellaneous line item. So my question is, you guys have fenced funds?
I would say that the answer to that is yes, but there are special ed requirements by law. So there are times when we may have to reduce a regular ed line item to meet the mandated costs by law.
So also, can you just arbitrarily move money between funds, just out of curiosity?
The board gets the bottom line number, but one of the things that we have prided ourselves on is being transparent and only making movement when we had a legal obligation to do so, as in special ed or something of that nature.
And this is no surprise because it's printed, like
Correct.
the taxpayers can all see this information.
Correct.
Thank
The-
you.
The Excel spreadsheet that's online goes item by item, line item by line item, the increase and decrease, so everything's there.
Yep, I have faith that the board is being prudent with our taxpayer dollars. Now, as far as 10 teachers, where are we cutting 10 teachers from? Like, have we thought about that? Like, what 10 have to go?
So we're in hypothetical a little bit right
Yeah.
now, right? But yeah, that would be,
I'd really love to know. Like, I'm assuming you cannot cut special ed teachers. Paras that,
things have to give if we were to lose, right? So yeah, it would be class size impacts and things like that. And the federal requirements around special, we probably couldn't do that. So it would probably be the regular ed, and we'd see class sizes increase exponentially from what they are.
what about students requiring one-on-one, like paras?
I can answer this. I mean, special ed costs are usually pretty set in law.
Okay.
Theoretically, could we let go a special ed teacher who's already working with 6 students and bring her up to 12? Yes, but then there are also laws about class sizes too. So there's a lot of things that would have to be considered. The amount of staff that we would have to cut, just so everybody knows, if I'm doing my math correctly, someone can correct me if I'm not, is about 18 to 20% of our staff would be gone.
Okay, so if that were the case, and say there were some cuts to special educators, could that potentially cost the district extra money in possible lawsuits?
Oh, absolutely. This sort of thing is just a recipe for spending more money down the road.
Yep.
Other districts that have done this happens. There's going to be more behaviors, there's going to be academic decline, there's going to be teachers leaving, there's going to be lawsuits over everything, including special education, discipline issues. It's setting us up, like I said, for a disaster. And we're all going to spend the money in the end. Our kids are just going to suffer in the interim.
And there would be out-of-district potentially increases as well, which is important to note. That's not good for 2 reasons. One, we want the students to stay in their district. You know, that makes sense. And then financially, it's more expensive to do that as well. So we would feel that in other ways too.
From my understanding, out-of-district placements can be double, triple.
Out-of-district placements can be, last time I checked, $70,000. If you have to put somebody's higher than that now, I know I haven't looked in a while, it's probably more like $100,000. That doesn't include transportation, which can be $300 a day. And when you're talking about a residential placement, which once you start wrecking Tier 1, your kids have to move up to Tier 2 and Tier 3. There are residential placements that are upwards of $300,000 each. 400 now, sorry. I'm behind the 8 ball with that. $400,000 each for one student. So, yeah.
So versus maybe 17 to 20,000 per student currently.
Yeah.
And we're looking at
And that's
astronomical
mandated
increase.
costs.
That's mandated.
Yep.
So my last question is, and I know this is all pretty new, but have there been any studies on the impact of freedom vouchers and how that's impacted our local budget? Has there been any kind of data on that? Because I know it's pulled millions from the state for
Yeah.
public education.
Okay.
I would say at this point that number is minimal. Most of our residents have chosen to stay within our school district. Some have moved to homeschooling, which is a great alternative for some families. But I would say overall, that piece right now in our community is minimal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Tom Rogers, 88 Lewis Drive again. I think that's a great point. There's been minimal movement away from the public schools despite all the talk about the rising costs and the big benefits about going into private school world, but we're retaining our students because we provide a good product. But at this point in the night, I just want to remind everybody, because there's a lot of discussion going on, what we're looking at is a budget that a lot of work by a lot of people went into versus a motion that has absolutely no backup up on the screen. So when we point to the bottom right-hand side of this screen, at least we can see a number. The motion and the number it included has absolutely no backup. So I just wanted to refresh that for the end of the, ready to vote.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Lisa Akey, 38 Westview Road, first-time caller, first-time listener. I have 2 young kids. We moved here because of the strength of the schools. I'm proud that we have the 3rd-ranked school district in New Hampshire. Our school district is competitive with some districts out of Massachusetts. And something that I think about when I look at tax increases is that the strength of our schools is also tied to the property values in our town. So what I look at it is, it's an investment in my kids' education and the kids after that, but it's also an investment in my home, right? Because if school districts start to fail, then property values go down, and that's not a connection that I had made until recently, but I think it's a really important one to bring up when we think about what we're investing into our schools and what we get back from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Sir.
Yeah, John Liska, 197 Route 13. I'm a business owner, and I don't think a lot of you understand really what is happening. Our steel plants are being closed. We would normally get a piece of equipment we could order within a month, 1 year. We're getting behind the 8 ball. It's nice to be able to afford things, but somebody's got to pay for it. We got people being laid off, things are closing down, and you're just going, wow. Like a business, we reallocate things to make things happen to keep it alive. And when we start looking at the cost of different towns, who's the wealthiest town, who's paying the most? So before we try to keep up with something that's much bigger than us, we better take a second thought. Because right now our economy is not very good, no matter what they say, because I work that field out there and I see it. And a lot of guys are going with nothing almost, a lot of them. So stop and think before you start, we've got to have this. Well, somebody's got to pay the money. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Can you recognize me real quick? Can I?
Certainly. Go ahead. Oh, you want to go? Well,
Can you just pretend I'm not up there?
1 second. What is the question?
I was just going to pretend I'm standing up there. Can I talk as a resident right now?
He's talking as a resident.
Thank you. Ken Haig, Ken Haig, Hobart Hill. So what I've struggled with this is we started this in September. We've received feedback around supporting it. No real inputs in our public, well, no inputs in our public hearing. The cycle goes 5 months, and then we come here and we take a 10%, $10 million or $1 million cut with zero plan. And it's just, it's reckless, it's foolish, and it just, I don't know how we do this every year, where we get to this deliberative session and it almost is hijacked. Then we go to the polls and it's a 4-1 overwhelmingly in favor. It's just, if there's feedback in the future, September, October, November, December, January, public hearing in January, there's 2 meetings in January normally, versus doing it here with no plan, with no backup, and significant risk to the budget and to the kids. That's all I guess I'd have to say to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, buddy, did you tell us where you live?
I'm sorry?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'll keep this direct. 2 comments. One, I work in a very specialized field, and the fastest way to get rid of people who know what they're doing and take the time to care about you is to not pay them. And I will tell you that because I walked away from my specialized field, or I'm in the process of doing that because I do not get paid what I'm worth, and I'm not going to work for people in a job that don't pay me what I'm worth. Number 2, yes, the economy's crap. All right, great, we can all agree on that. But at the end of the day, history shows us that economies will rebound. They're flexible. They rebound. I'm not willing to undercut my children's education and the future of our town because of an economy that's poor right now. Like, let's think about the long term as well. It's poor right now, but it was poor in 2008. It bounced back. It was poor before that. It bounced back. There was a Great Depression in the early 1900s. It bounced back. Don't undercut and undersell our children because you guys don't want to pay for the next 2 years. I'm sorry, like, I just have to be direct. This is about longer than just the next 2 years in the economy.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Diane Power, 12 Westview Road in Brookline. So I support quality education. That's paramount that we educate our children. So, and I do respect the budget process that the school board has gone through with the help of the Finance Committee. And the point that I would like to bring back and remind everybody in this room is that we wouldn't be having this conversation if, at the end of the budget process, the 8% tax cap had been respected and adhered to. So that's the point that I would like to make. We wouldn't be here with this motion to amend had the increase been 8% or less. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to amend, whereby we would change the first number on Article 3 as printed from $11,283,450 to $10,165,028. That's what we're talking about, just the motion to amend to make that change. Anyone else want to address the motion to amend? Alrighty, so let's put it to a vote. All those in favor of changing the number from that $11 million number to that $10 million number, please raise your voting card. Everybody opposed, raise your voting card. It's overwhelmingly against. The motion is defeated. So we're back to the original number. We're back to that original number. Are you good, sir? Can I do something? AV guy? Okay. I guess we're going to take a pause, or may I proceed?
I think we can at least proceed with that.
All right, so we're closing under Article 3, and we move on to Article 4, which reads as follows. Shall the voters of this Brook... Yes, sir.
We need to take a vote on Article 3, which voted on the amendment. We didn't vote on the article itself.
No, we ended discussion.
We ended discussion.
So it has to be two just...
Okay.
Do
you need me to move to end discussion on 3?
No, it stopped. Does anybody else want to address it? No, so it's done. We don't need the motion, thank you. But Brian's right. I should say now, unlike town meeting, if discussion is done, the article as brought forward by the school board is what appears on the ballot. So we move on to 4. Thank you for helping make that clear. Article 4 reads as follows. Shall the voters of the Brookline School District adopt a school administrative unit budget of $2,265,374 for the forthcoming fiscal year, in which $446,191 is assigned to the school budget of this school district. This year's adjusted budget of $2,247,208, with $442,809 assigned to the school budget of this school district, will be adopted if the article does not receive... I've already confused myself. You guys understand this? I'm going to start over again because it made no sense to me. Okay, here we go. It was hopefully better this time. Shall the voters of the Brookline School District adopt a school administrative unit budget of $2,264,374 for the forthcoming fiscal year, in which $446,191 is assigned to the school budget of this school district. This year's adjusted budget, is that a default budget, guys?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it's adjusted.
It is an adjusted budget. That's the proper term for SAB.
But it functions like a default? Okay. This year's adjusted budget of $2,247,208 with $442,809 assigned to the school budget of this school district will be adopted if the article does not receive a majority vote of all the school district voters voting in this school administrative unit. Thank you. The school board recommends this Article 5-0. Finance recommends this Article 3-0. Estimated tax impact, 63 cents per $1,000 of valuation. And this is another item which the statutes say you may not amend. I didn't make that law, but it governs you. We can't amend that number. So who would like to talk about our portion of the SAU's budget? Sir.
Yes, Eric Power, Westview Road.
Well, I know, they're right.
You skipped me.
The proponent should go first. Forgive me. Eric, I apologize to you. Please, Karen.
So just a little overview of what the SAU office is, for those who might not know. We are comprised of 3 separate school districts. There's the Brookline School District, the Hollis District, and the Hollis-Brookline Co-op District. The SAU office oversees 3 separate sets of teacher contracts, 3 separate sets of support staff contracts, and 3 budgets totaling over $55.5 million, and they oversee over 2,400 students. We have a unique setup in the state. There are not many districts that are set up the way SAU 41 is, and this requires a lot of specialized training and unique machinations in payroll and budgeting to administer everything according to each specific district. It's governed by the SAU Governing Board, which is made up of all 3 school boards, and we made it a priority that we would like to look into compensation and make sure that our staff at the SAU level was paid an appropriate level. We didn't want to set the market, but we wanted to get our staff up to a level where they would be competitive, because turnover at that level is not easy to replace and to train. So as a result of that, we increased, you can see there's a change of $161,198 over last year, a 7.5% change. That's the next slide. Thank you. The portion that Brookline School District is responsible for is approximately 20% of that budget. We went back in December, and we also wanted to make sure our hourly employees at the SAU were also compensated in a rate that was competitive. This process happens, our governing board meets quarterly. We discussed this in September. We had a public hearing in December, and that is the place where people could provide feedback. And as Peter mentioned, this is kind of like, vanilla ice cream with chocolate sauce. We can present it as it is. You can't add sprinkles right now, and you can't take away the chocolate sauce. It is what it is. So.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Part of the reason we are seeing, this is Eric Power, Westview Road, part of the reason we're seeing this 20% increase is this SAU budget. And I know we can't amend it here tonight, but I did provide feedback to the whole SAU board when I saw this increase. And I saw some increases to some of the administrators that were 10%. I think I saw a 17% increase. This says 3 to 5%. That's for some of the lower paid individuals. But can someone on the board speak to the increases that were given to, like, the superintendent, the director of facilities, the business administrator? Or am I off on that they were given large increases?
Don't recall the increases being that high, but we did look at compensation across the state and make sure that we were in line with competitive rates. We're not, again, we didn't set the market with any of these. We just brought people up to where their peers were.
I also recently, the Department of Education just posted all of the salaries of business administrators, assistant superintendents, and superintendents in New Hampshire. And our superintendent is number 3 in the state right now. We aren't the number 3 in size. So, I saw that he was given about a 9.9% raise in the information I read. I just think that this kind of budget increase just compounds the problem. That's why we're paying 20% tax increase. I'd also like to let you know that voters know that this is our portion, but since we're in the co-op, there's a portion that goes there, and we have to pay for part of it there as well. This isn't only part of our SAU that we pay for. We pay for a little bit more, so this gets a portion by what they call 50/50, equalized valuation, average daily membership. That's what's used to apportion to the 3 districts, so just to clarify that. But I would vote no on this article at the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Brady Halligan, 17 Birch Hill. You get what you pay for.
Thank you, sir.
Tom Solon, Shady Rock Road. I am also one of your co-op school board members. I've been on Brookline and co-op school boards for, I think, going on 19 years now, for better or worse.
A glutton for punishment, and we are very grateful.
And I'm not saying that to say that I have anything other than a lot of historical awareness of what's gone on. We are currently in a situation nationally with a dramatic shortage of administrators. Last I knew, I think there were 19 open positions for superintendents in the state of New Hampshire. We are fortunate to have an administrative staff, including our superintendent, assistant superintendents, business administrators, who have conducted themselves in a way for many years that have become leaders in the state and the country. People look to them for guidance because of their innovative actions. We've brought our budgets into compliance and kept our increases lower than typical in the state while providing superior education. This SAU is probably the most cost-effective part of your expenditure because they have the ability to have broad impact. They are able to look at all 3 districts, consolidate opportunities, lower costs in that way, and improve the education. The total amount of the budget is $2 million out of about over $50 million. So it's about the amount is about 4% of the overall budget that you're spending on education. I personally advocate for increased investment at the SAU because of the dividends it pays on the overall impact of our school district. Right now, I ask you to support this budget, support the people who are running our schools and providing the results that you want. If you really want to cut the costs of administration within our overall school area, the way to do it would be to have a single school district, K through 12, for Hollis and Brookline. You would now have only 2 contracts to deal with. You would cut your budgets by 75% as far as the number of budgets you had to deal with. They issue over 10,000 purchase orders because each district has to be run independently. So if you're really looking for cost effectiveness, if cost is the driver of your decision, I would advocate you support a K through 12 co-op. Thank you.
Fascinating. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Allison Mannion for McIntosh. As a former school administrator, I know the challenges of the job. I know the niche in which it takes to do that job, and you get what you pay for. We may be paying for somebody who's 3rd in the state, but we are 3rd in the state when it comes to excellence. So frankly, there should be more. Make them first, let's go be first. Let's support them just the same way that we support our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I just want to echo on behalf of the board that we did think about the increases, and we fully all support those increases. Being a superintendent, assistant superintendent is a thankless job. There's a ton of competition because nobody wants to do it, quite frankly, especially in this state. And so we stand by the raises that we gave, that we offered.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 4? If there is none, we're going to end it and move on to 5. Going once, going twice, all done on 4. That will appear in the ballot as written. On to Article 5, Special Education Reserve Trust, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $25,000 to be added to the previously established Special Education Expendable Trust Fund, with this sum to be raised by taxation. Estimated tax impact, 4 cents per thousand. School board recommends 3 in favor, 2 against. Finance committee recommends 3 in favor. Discussion.
Hi, I'm Kelly Zacher. I'll speak to this warrant article. So the Brookline School District established a special education trust, expendable trust fund in 2018. And the purpose of this fund was to help defray the cost of a sudden unanticipated cost. As we've discussed many times tonight, special education costs are federally mandated. And it can be an existing student who experiences a catastrophic illness or an accident who suddenly has the need for special education services. It could be a student receiving a new diagnosis. It could be a student moving into the district that has special education needs. And without the expendable trust fund, that could really bankrupt a district. And so we established this as a rainy day fund for special education needs so that to try to protect the budget and the district. We strive to maintain a balance of $250,000 because this is roughly the cost of an unanticipated out-of-district placement with transportation. And I want to explain the school board vote of 3, 2, and 0. When we met with the finance committee to review the warrant articles and make the warrant to present to you tonight, we had the option of 3 different options. And excuse me, I'm just going to read from our packet from that night in January. Our first option was to do it by taxation only. The second option would be to do it just by the unreserved fund balance, which is a separate unreserved fund balance that the school district uses in case something else comes up. We don't have to come to the taxpayers and hold a special meeting and ask the school district, the governing body, to appropriate funds on an emergency basis. So we have an unreserved fund balance for that purpose. So we had the option of either just try to take that money from the unreserved fund balance and shift costs there. We had the option to do it by taxation, and we had the option to do it partly from the unreserved fund balance and partly from taxation, like a hybrid. One of the things that we discussed as a board at that meeting, if you've watched the minutes or if you attended, was that at this point in time, and again, we have until June, but my understanding is at this point in time, there's really not any money left in the unreserved fund balance. And so because special education is federally mandated, that would mean that any money, we'd be taking that money from someplace that doesn't exist, which means we would have to take it from someplace else. And so the 3-2-0 vote that you see in terms of the board recommending is 3 board members voted to do it by straight taxation because we want to make sure that this money is here in the special education fund balance, because we have learned over the last several years, decades, that these expenses do come up, and As you have heard tonight, special education is an unfunded federal mandate that is a huge driver of our budgetary increases. And I think 2 other members were in favor of a hybrid method. So we all are in favor of funding the Special Education Trust Fund. It was a difference on how to fund it.
Thank you, Madam. Sir?
Tom Solon, Shady Rock Road. I have a question about the explanation area on the printout. It talks about the intention of using, the anticipated need to use up to $150,000 of the fund during this fiscal year. But the description of this is to have it available for unanticipated expenses. So I'm curious why there would be a planned, almost budgeted withdrawal from this, as opposed to if you've got anticipated costs, why not build those anticipated costs into the budget and maintain this as what I'll characterize as an emergency fund?
Sir?
The expense came in after the budget was set. So as we always do, we're looking to see if we can offset those costs via the operating budget. So the projection of using the fund is what we anticipate for students that moved in last summer that couldn't be projected into this budget.
If it was last summer, why couldn't it be in the budget?
Last March, we passed the budget. Over the summer.
So this is, you anticipate to take it out of this current year?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir?
Oh, can I also just add to Tom's point?
Certainly.
In the operating budget, I was doing some math of that $758,000 change. $409,000 of that is special education funds that we did add into the operating budget.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Eric Bauer, Westview Road. I would like to make a motion to amend,
Yes, sir.
and I'll give you this printed wording here so you can have it. I'll
I
just read it
appreciate it.
first. Article 5, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $25,000 from the June 30th unreserved fund balance, parentheses surplus, available for transfer on July 1st of this year to be added to the previously established Special Education Expendable Trust Fund.
Thank you very much. Would you like to speak to that motion to amend? Sir, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I'd like to speak to it. I got a second, I guess, right?
I'm sorry?
Did I get a second?
Thank you very much. I appreciate that
official.
formality. Yes, indeed, you do, and my apologies. Thanks for keeping me on my toes.
Yeah, so the language I just read is basically doing what the school board talked as option 3. And in all previous years, when we're funding trust funds, we've always done it out of the unreserved fund balance. And that's the reason why we set these up. We always want to have the precedent. Now, can we tax people to pay into that? Of course we can, and that's what they're proposing. But I think we're going to be already having if this is taxation, we need to find some place where we can give voters an option here. If there's unreserved funds, you still doesn't defray the taxes for the next year, but it doesn't hit us for next year. So I'd rather, use the unreserved fund balance. I hear that it's low. Maybe it won't be able to be funded. Maybe it will. Because it's earlier in the warrant, it would be funded before the other one. And that's why I made this motion. And while I have the microphone, I just wanted to mention something about Croydon that was mentioned earlier.
That's a town in New Hampshire.
A town in New Hampshire. They do not have SB2. They have traditional meeting. They had a traditional meeting where they cut their budget by about 53%, I think the number was, something like that. They did not have balloting. They actually had another meeting under traditional that they were allowed to, that law lets you have. So SB2 would have actually stopped that. So I just want to correct that point, is that it was, and I know people that live in Croydon, I know the school board chair myself, they do not have SB2. So thank you for listening on that, and I urge you to vote yes on this modification to the warrant article.
Thank you, sir. So we're discussing the proposed amendment. Is everybody clear on what that is, ma'am? Are you clear? Do you want me to read it again? You good?
I think I've got
Okay,
it. Thank
go.
you. Jill Aitken, Potanipo Hill Road. I am speaking in opposition to the proposed amendment. I'd like to point out that, as the school board pointed out, the special education is federally mandated. So, you know, if things such as, for instance, the anticipated use of $150,000 that's coming up this year, fortunately we have the money to cover that because we've planned for it. So it won't affect our budget. It looks to me, in looking at this slide, that even if we pass at the polls, if we pass the proposed funding through taxation that the school board is proposing, we're still going to end up, as best we can anticipate, we're still going to end up with an ending balance of only $100,000. I say only $100,000 because we're trying to keep it at $225,000 is my understanding, because of what the school board talked about, that is the common, or that is what it can cost to place one child. You can have more than one child come up in a year. So this is an important thing. It's federally mandated that we fund these special education needs. So, you know, like it or not, if these special education needs come up and we haven't planned for it, we're going to have to pull the money out of somewhere else, and that's going to hurt all of the kids. So I think it's important that, you know, I mean, I would argue that we should, you know, I understand the school board is doing a wonderful job of trying to keep costs down and taxation costs down, and I'm sure that's why they're proposing a course of action that leaves us with $100,000 in the reserve trust. But I would just argue that, you know, if anything, we should be putting more into the special education reserve trust. So I am very much in favor of what the school board has proposed and worked very hard on, you know, kind of weighing the pros and cons of what to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Grady Allegan, 17 Birch Hill. Can the board speak to, the board said they considered this proposal already and rejected it by a vote of 3-2. Can the board speak to why the motion that's on the table was
it was accepted 3-2. So there were two.
Yeah,
I'm one of the members who was opposing it. So there were three that accepted the motion as it stands, and two of us who didn't. And I can't speak for the other board member. For me, it was down to, I wanted it through the unreserved fund balance. To be perfectly honest, if I'd had it my way, it would have been the unreserved fund balance at a lot higher value. Because I feel that draining this trust fund this much is going to really set us up for a scenario down the road that could be incredibly dangerous for us in terms of fiscal responsibility. But at the same time, we're looking this year and we don't have, right now, we don't stand with an unreserved fund balance. And if I have to look at it as like the entirety of the taxation process, in my own opinion, I feel like this is a place where I don't want to mandate it down. And if we have the resources to fund the fund, then fantastic. But if we don't, then we need to not be taking more and more and more money. That was just my opinion.
So I'm the other one. So we talked about this in length at the public hearing, and it's really a color of money that we were trying to figure out how to best raise and appropriate and support these. And I think Article 6 is important to take into account too, which we'll talk about too. And the order of these on how they get funded is also a key piece. So because this was ahead of Article 6, the 25K coming from that mechanism of unreserved fund balance first, and then taxing for the, called 150K on the facilities. We had 100,000 of that 150 that is a must-do next year, and my concern was that we had to fulfill that obligation, and this could be drawn through the unreserved fund balance. It was my logic. There was another piece, and I'm misremembering it right now, but that's the primary reason. And I think the other piece is we were cognizant of the budget increases this year. I mean, we recognize that they're expensive, and we talked through why, but where we could, we were trying to be as thoughtful around raising and appropriating and driving additional taxes where we could and where we didn't have to.
Just because I know at the actual meeting as a new board member, I was struggling with this a little bit. I just want to clarify for everybody that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we all support this article. It's where the sum is to be raised from. That's the only difference. And now that it is what it is, we voted on that, it's still needed. I mean, I think we all agree on that.
Yeah,
it's just we were trying to decide, do we take it out of taxation or the unreserved?
I understand
Okay.
that. So the root of my question is, it sounds like three of you want or support the motion that, not the motion, excuse me, the original article as written, and two of you are more interested in the motion that's presently on the table. And I'm just trying to understand the board's thoughts on that so that all of us can make a smart decision.
Yeah, and I guess I do want to echo Colleen. We unanimously 5-0 want to support this. It's just how we raise and appropriate the money. I think we unanimously feel that this is a very important article. It's just the color of money piece on how it gets.
Understood. Thank you very much.
I'm back. Tom Solon on Shady Rock Road. I'm speaking in favor of this amendment. I am supportive of the concept of this fund. It is a necessary safeguard insurance. Perhaps like Allison, I think it should be a bigger number. In the climate that we're in, I respect the board's decision to hold it at 25, but I do think that the appropriate means of funding this, seeing how it is a sort of an insurance policy and a what if as opposed to a known expense. I don't like the fact that we're going to be depleting it. I respect the possibility that the administration will do everything they can to find the costs within the existing budget. But if we're going to replenish it, I support replenishing it from the unreserved fund balance. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you ended that by saying from the unreserved fund, from surplus. Is this in support of the motion? I thought so. Okay. Okay. So, do we have any further discussion on the amendment? The amendment is to change the language you have at 5 to read, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of up to $25,000 from the June 30 unreserved fund balance, parens, surplus, close parens, available for transfer on July 1 of this year, to be added to the previously established Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. Concern has been expressed as to whether we have to show tax impact on such an article in this town, given past votes. It would have to show on the ballot. I agree with you. The gentleman, I think it's somebody else's problem. I think it has to be in the ballot in that manner. It should be in the context of this meeting too, but we're taking out surplus. I'm not sure how you can calculate the tax impact of that.
It's in there as foregoing a potential rate reduction of 4 cents per 1,000.
Well, thank you very much. Say that again.
It's foregoing a potential rate reduction of 4 cents per $1,000.
It's giving that up.
Yes.
Foregoing.
So instead of, because it's the unassigned fund balance, instead of that going like towards the next year's budget, you're saying, I'm going to give that up, it's already been pulled, but I'm not going to get it back for the next year. Yeah.
So are we saving 4 cents or giving up 4 cents?
You're not being asked for an extra 4 cents.
Okay.
It's a
Over
neutral
my
4
head.
cents.
Okay, thank you guys for dealing with this. Yes, ma'am.
Erin Saris, 15 Highview Drive. I just have a, and Kelly might have answered this already and I missed it, but the rationale for doing this by taxation this year as opposed to the way it's previously been done. There's previously using the unreserved fund balance, there hasn't been an issue with being able to fund it. Is there a concern that there may not, is there something distinct about this year?
It'll be tight.
Where there's a risk that it won't be funded at all? Is that the key? Okay, I just wanted to make
Should have
that
said that earlier. Thank you.
clear. Okay, for my own
Yeah.
understanding. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Would you like to speak on the amendment?
No, I basically was going to speak to what Aaron was asking, I just wanted to remind everybody that the concern, from what I understand, is that, that there's not going to be money in the unreserved trust fund. So that was it. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to amend Article 5 is written to a mechanism whereby it's taken out of surplus rather than additional taxation? Any further discussion on it?
Can I just ask a clarification?
Oh, yes, please.
So Mr. Power said his amendment is option 3 in what was proposed in January, but what was proposed in January's option 3 is actually the hybrid, so that if there...
He just misspoke.
Okay.
Take it back.
The language that I put forward is what I'm proposing.
Okay, so that's...
If I didn't know your numbers of the options, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm going from the January presentation, right? So option 1, because option 3 is that if there isn't any money in the unreserved fund balance, then the remainder of that $25,000 would be raised by taxation. So my understanding is with option 1, if there's no money in the unreserved fund balance to fund it, which from what I understood from the last board meeting from our business manager, there wasn't. My understanding, and again, like Colleen, I'm new at this, is that it would be funded to the amount that was available. So if there's $5 left in the unreserved fund balance, there's $5 added to the special education trust fund. And that is why I voted for option 2, to raise the money by taxation instead of raising it from the unreserved fund balance.
Okay, so where we are now is we're voting on an amendment to change Article 5 to read, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of up to $25,000 from the June 30 unreserved fund balance, parens surplus, close parens, available for transfer on July 1 of this year to be added to the previously established Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. All those in favor of that amendment, please raise your voting card. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your voting card. It's a vote in the negative, therefore the motion to amend fails. And we're back to the language as it was. Do we have any discussion further on Article 5? Hearing none, that'll be brought forward on to the ballot, and you will see it March 14. Moving on to Article 6, Maintenance Trust, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of up to $155,000 to be added to the previously established School Facilities Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund, with $100,000 of this sum to be raised by taxation and the remaining balance of up to $55,000 to come from the June 30th unassigned fund balance, parens surplus, close parens, that is not raised by taxation. Estimated tax impact, 14 cents per thousand for $100,000. For the $100,000, and foregoing a potential rate reduction of 8 cents per thousand for the $55,000. The school board recommends this Article 5-0. Finance recommends this Article 3-0. Discussion. Proponent, thank you.
So this is, again, being funded a little differently, and there's a good reason for that. So right now, we're expecting our final balance to be at $71,200 with a replenishment of $155 and our proposed use of $174, which would leave us with $52,100. If you go to the next slide, you can see, and I can better explain what we're looking at as the fund to be used. So there's a second stage of cafeteria tables to be replaced, a burglar alarm, an access panel, some wiring updates that need to be done because when the buildings were wired, I believe especially RMMS, it was wired by volunteers. Some exterior doors that need updating and some exterior lighting. The big issue that we have been avoiding for years and years now, I feel like, is the fire panel. And the fire panel is $100,000. And with the tightness of the budget, and this being an item that has been on the radar and has passed its serviceable life, that we really, it is still functioning, so no worries, your children are safe. I want to point that out. But it is at the end of life. So that is something that we feel like we really need to address this year. And that's why we were talking about the $100K in terms of taxation, just because that is such a critical component. And with the budget being tight, we didn't know if we would end up having that as the unassigned fund balance. The rest of the items are still necessary, but that fire panel is critical. So that's why the rest of the money would come through the unassigned fund balance.
The only thing to add, I believe, and I just want to clarify, I believe we had feedback from our fire department that they were urgently recommending that this get passed this cycle as well. So that's not just the school board, that's the Brookline Fire Department as well, recommending this go through this year.
Yes, sir.
Tom Soul on Shady Rock Road. I'm quite disappointed to see how this is being proposed. The maintenance fund, along with many of them, I believe was intended to be an accumulating fund to build up towards things. What you are presenting here is a pass-through. You're asking that we put money in for things that we know we have to spend immediately. To me, to some degree, it's circumventing the budgeting process because this is a real expense. I'm not disputing the needs are here, and I'm not disputing the fact that the existence of a facilities maintenance fund is appropriate. But this is the same position I've taken with the co-ops as well. If you know it needs to be spent, and you know it needs to be spent in the upcoming year, put it in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I respond to that, Tom? So first of all, I'd like to say that last year we had cheap money on the warrant, I think at less than maybe 3%, which was the bond that would have paid to do all of these upgrades, including the fire panels, including all of the safety, including all of the deferred maintenance. So we had budgeted for that and had put forth a bond that would have been really cheap in today's terms. And if you look again at the first few rounds of the budget, both in safety and compliance issues and in facilities and maintenance, those were things that were included. And so, again, in trying to keep the budget low and trying to present the taxpayers and the governing body with a budget that stayed within the operating budget tax cap, we had to make cuts. And knowing that there's no money in the unreserved fund balance and that the maintenance trust has been used for surprise things and things that come up, we felt like this was our only option.
I understand your point, Tom, because it's gone through my mind in this cycle too. I guess my thought is if that's a feeling of the public, I would love to take that input and we can consider that in the next budget cycle here, because I can absolutely see your point and understand it. The only thing I think that stuck out to me in this cycle was making sure that 100K fire panel was funded in some way. And we were concerned around the budget tightness to make sure that that had a line item that was funded and wasn't part of cuts. But I guess I would offer that up to the public here and those listening and those that read the notes after the fact. If you have feedback on this, how this maintenance trust is being proposed for use, send that to the board. I think we could take that for the cycle.
I just want to point out, thank you for the feedback, but what you have done is put it at risk, because this can get voted down, and then you don't have this money. The budget, there was a kind of a convoluted discussion earlier, but it's a bottom line budget. And once a budget is approved, you know you have the money to spend as you prioritize within that. And you do have the ability to move it around. If you really felt that this had to be paid and it was in the budget, no matter what budget got approved, you would have the option of funding this. But right now, if this doesn't get funded, if this warrant article gets shot down, you're back to not having the funding of the panel, and it's not in the budget either. So I understand why people do it. I disagree with it. Thank you.
Eric Power, Westview Road. I agree with Tom. I don't always agree with Tom, but I agree with him on this point. I do want to make a motion to amend Article 6 to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $55,000 from the June 30th unreserved fund balance, parentheses surplus, available for transfer on July 1st of this year to be added to the previously established school facilities maintenance expendable trust fund.
Can I just clarify?
No, not yet. We've got a motion to amend, and it can be entertained if we have a second. We have a second. And so now we move into discussion. Since he's the proponent of the proposition, I'm going to let him speak to it, and then you can reply.
Yes, this motion is to not do the $100,000 by taxation and just do the $55,000 by the unreserved fund balance, essentially. We've always done our trust funds with unreserved fund balance. I don't think we should be changing that precedent. I think that's a danger of it not passing at the ballot, because I think that people are expecting that to be used with leftover money. I understand the budget's tight this year. If you get the $55,000 and you have $71,000, you can prioritize. You're not going to do everything on this list, but you can do the fire panel, maybe do some of the burglar alarms access points. And I don't agree with pulling out a known expense that you think you need and not putting it in the operating budget just to try to meet some interpretation of the tax cap, which I obviously don't agree with. Because as Tom mentioned, now you might not get it at all. So that the proposal here is not to increase taxation, but to use any unreserved fund balance to fund the maintenance trust as we've always done. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the gentleman's motion to amend, whereby the numbers change to $55,000 and it comes out of surplus. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, it's me again. I still live at the same house on Birch Hill.
No, don't.
17 Birch Hill Road, Johanna Shriver, Halligan. I'm a little confused because 55,000, okay, so we just heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that we are not actually expecting, I know you guys kind of gave the numbers, but like we are proposing to budget the special ed from the unreserved fund, we're budgeting this from the unreserved, and we're hearing maybe that's at risk of not being funded. And now I'm seeing that, like, okay, the $100,000 just for the fire panel alone, like, do y'all want these kids to burn up? Because, like, that's what's gonna happen if you don't have a fire panel. And I just, like, not trying to be rude, but like, I mean, like, that's a pretty serious need right there. You know what I mean? Like, so I understand that money is tight. Like, I think we all understand that after tonight. And y'all can disagree or not agree with me, I don't care. But like, at this point, like, this is, like, you can prioritize, but how are you gonna prioritize that when we're cutting teachers, right? All right, we're cutting teachers, we're cutting special ed, pick and choose, like, what's a safety issue and what's not. I mean, my daughter's in preschool and legit, like, will run through a parking lot. Like, if she saw an open door, she'd be out there and across the street in a heartbeat. We're not securing access points. We're not replacing cafeteria tables. Like, these buildings exist. They're here, you know, we have to maintain them. And if the fire department is recommending that the fire panel needs to be replaced, I think that's a very serious point that needs to be taken seriously. And not just like, let's cross our fingers and hope that we have unreserved funds, because that's kind of like we've moved past that point. You know, things have use-by dates for a reason. So I just wanted to put that out there and leave that.
And you've spoken
Yes.
in favor or against?
I am opposing the
Thank you very
amendment,
much.
yes.
Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Brady Halligan, the other half of 17 Birch Hill. The fire department here are volunteers. There may not be very many of us available in the middle of the day, during the school day especially. And early warning and evacuation would be of critical importance to life. And putting this language in that would say, well, maybe we'll do this if there is unassigned fund balances and we're forecasting that there won't be, could be problematic at best. So I would oppose the amendment, and there are other ways to save money, like having a on-call, mostly volunteer fire department.
Thank you, sir.
Ed Perry, Muscatanabus. I don't know if I'm in opposition or support, but I do find myself relatively horrified that in a country as great as ours, we're pitting neighbor against neighbor over fire panels. And I think for the people at home, it might be time to start calling up to Concord and saying, where's the support? I know we have lawsuits involved that are to the tune of the state constitution may be in violation, and that we might not be receiving the funding that we're supposed to receive. And this is what it causes. When we have a dereliction of duty up in Concord, and we're not receiving the funds that the constituents are asking for, we get into these situations where we're pitting neighbor against neighbor, which is so sad in small communities where we all rely on each other. I hope that our elected officials are watching these meetings and that they're sad too. And if they're not, shame on them. But especially with regards to things like the fire panel, you know, not a laughing matter. I think that was a little gross that folks laughed. But I'll say this, as someone who wants to save money for the town, wants to find real ways to do it, now that we know that we've got a fire panel that needs to be replaced, now that that is public information, if anything should happen, the lawsuit that would come down on this town would financially cripple us. Because once you know about something, you don't have any recourse at that point. You're not in a position to say, oh, well, we didn't know. You lose that protection. So as we think of ways to keep our budgets intact, those are two things to consider. Call Concord. Ask them what they're doing. We pay them, not much. That might be why we get what we get. We pay McDonald's workers more. So maybe that's why it's in the state that it's in. But I would also like people just to consider the downstream things that can happen. A lawsuit and a loss of life be a lot more than $100,000.
Thanks, sir. Yes, sir.
Peter Walker, 57 Pepperell Road. Did I hear that the panel as it exists currently is in compliance?
It's a fully functioning panel. It's at the end of its useful life. We've had some difficulties with it, but it's regularly inspected and passing. Peter.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Marty Goslin, North Mason. Is the panel not working?
Sir?
The panel's working.
Thank you, sir. Anything further on the motion to amend Article 6 as presented by the school board? Yes, sir.
Tom Rogers, Lewis Drive. I actually agree with the points for next year that we should be including these things in the regular budget. That's just how things are normally handled like this. That said, what we're talking about are systems that are end of life. To the point about the fire panel working, I'm in insurance, I have a little bit of expertise in this. Compare that, you have a school with a fire panel that's at end of life. It's being recommended by our fire department and by experts to replace that because it is at end of life. If you were in a hospital and you had a respirator that was end of life or a cardiac resuscitation pads that were end of life, how would you feel if the budget process went like this and someone said, oh, you know what, is it still working? Okay, we're good, we're not going to replace that. So these things all come down to numbers. I agree that it should be in the regular budget. I disagree with how we're handling it. But really, everything we're doing here is kicking things down the road. These issues have been around for a while. We've been talking about this for a while. I think we should fund it. I oppose the amendment because, or the motion, because we should pay for it this year. We should get this done. But next year, we should handle it in a more responsible way. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Can I speak, I don't have,
Well, pardon me, go right ahead.
I don't have my notes with me, but my recollection from the meeting when the fire department spoke to us is that, again, it's not that it's not functioning at all, but that it mistones. And when it mistones, it requires a disruption in the day where the building administrator has to call to the fire department and verify that there is no actual smoke or fire occurring in the building at the time. So it works, it just doesn't work with, I think, 100% accuracy, and it requires human verification whenever it tones. So it works, but not in a way that's appropriate for a school building.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Jill Aitken, Botanical Hill Road. The gentleman before me said this a lot more eloquently than I can, but I am hearing from everyone up front and the gentleman before me, and I agree. The fire panel, if it's, we'll put in air quotes, fully functioning now, but we've been having problems with it. It's missing tones. We have to verify it every day. Now is the time to replace it. Not when it fails at the critical moment. And I think we're all in agreement on that. I understand people are disappointed with where it's showing up that it's not in the proper budget, and I understand that, but I also understand that the school board is fighting to try to keep the operating budget down because of the whole deliberation we just had earlier tonight. So, you know, something's got to give, but I think we can all agree that this needs to be funded, and let's try to create public awareness about how important this article is and try to get this passed. Now, as it's proposed, I'm speaking in opposition to the amendment. So I would like to get us to keep it as it's proposed on the polls, and let's get the word out and get this thing passed at the polls the way it has been proposed by the school board. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Marty Goslin, North Mason Road, electrician. I work on these panels. The panel doesn't need to be replaced. It hasn't failed. It's the communication. I think there needs to be a lot more discussion on, you don't just rip the whole thing out just because there's been a lot of the 3G, 5G, all that crazy stuff, like different communication methods. Just because it's not communicating well doesn't mean you have to replace the whole system. We don't need to replace the whole system. Thank you.
May I ask you a question?
Appreciate it.
May I ask a question? Have you inspected this fire panel? I legitimately
This-
don't know if you're part of the inspection of the fire panels that have gone on here.
Not this one.
Okay, I just was clarifying. I don't know who does it. I'm not going to lie to you.
Not this one specifically, but
Okay.
I see a lot of them.
Okay, thank you.
And it's the communication, they stopped the 3G communication, yada, 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 like, I know we don't need to get into technical stuff, but
Okay,
you don't
thank
need
you.
to
I
replace the whole
appreciate it.
panel. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Tom Duran, 21 Meeting House. I have a quick question. All these changes to funding through taxes, they'll roll through for the next year and continue on, correct?
They'll only be for 1 year.
Only be for 1
So
year?
if it passes at the election in March 9th, somewhere around there, sorry, I don't have, 14th? I think it was 9th, like 4 years ago. Then it'll go through. But the next year, it is like a whole reset on what the school board will propose as their warrant articles.
Okay, so I'm going to speak in favor of this. I just feel like you put 3 kind of critical safety items in public view and then kind of played on emotions to kind of ramrod this through using people's emotions. This was well versed for operational budget stuff. What I do in the government, if like Boeing pulled this, the government would be all over them. I don't understand why we're not all over you for this glaring oversight. That's all. Thanks.
Appreciate it, sir. Thanks for
Thank you.
speaking.
And I guess I just take a moment to welcome you to come to our hearings when we have these. They start September, October, November, December, January. We post them every time. They're 6
they're
o'clock.
different every year. The voters, let me take the opportunity, we all have busy lives, but so many of the decision-making processes are preceded by public hearings. It means you got to look at the town website, which sucks, and you got to try to pick up when these things are happening. So it takes some aggressive work, and you got better things to do, but as the decision evolves, it's better to be in early on than at the tail end. Yes, sir.
So I have a point of order question.
Uh-oh.
And it's related to this, but it doesn't sound like it at first. Would it be in order for us to go back and reconsider the vote on the operating budget? And the reason I ask this is we could take out the $100,000 out of this warrant article, put it in the operating budget. The operating budget can go over the 8% tax cap because we would be doing it here at this body. The tax cap is only on the budget that's presented by the school board. It is not on the budget that is approved at this body. We could move the $100,000 over to the budget and leave this for just the remaining items. So would that be in order is the question.
Well, it's certainly creative. I would say that there's not been a motion to restrict reconsideration, so reconsideration is still on the table for any of the decisions made earlier. But I can't speak to the application of the tax cap on the ballot versus on that which the board presents.
Yep.
It is correct. The tax cap can be overridden by the legislative body in the deliberative session.
Council? Affirmative?
Yes. I'll read the statute. And this is the statute that Mr. Powers cited earlier. The provisions of this section shall not limit the legislative body's authority to increase or decrease the amount of any appropriation or the total amount of all appropriations. So yeah, it's allowed.
Thank you. Could you give me where is that? What RSA is that?
It's 32:5-B, B as in boy, Roman 3.
Okay. So while they cannot propose something in excess of the tax cap, these folks, the voters, are entitled to approve something in excess of tax cap. Have I got that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so where would you like to go with all that, sir?
It's a complicated thing, though. So what I would like to do is really just to get have a vote of just to get a sense of the meeting if people would like to do that. Because if we do that, we need to make an amendment to this one, then we need to go back and amend the operating budget warrant article as well. They go together.
Yeah, my brain is not good at handling more than one motion on the floor at the time.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily a motion. I'm just asking for a sense of the meeting if they would like to do this or not before we go into actually voting on doing it.
To reopen conversation on the budget? Is it?
He's wondering if we...
I'm just wondering if there's enough support here of moving the $100,000 from this warrant article to the operating budget, or just leave it here.
Okay, how many people would want to do that? Raise their hand. How many people would not want to do that? Raise their hand. Dead in the water.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Thank you. I admire your creativity. Maybe if it was earlier in the evening, it would fly. Okay, so where is we? We are talking about Mr. Powers' motion to amend and whether you want to change the Article 6 as posed by the board, which has $155,000 as opposed to the motion to amend says $55,000. And the board's article, as you have in front of you, has $100,000 of that 155 from taxation and 55 from the surplus. So all those who are in favor of Mr. Powers' motion to amend, whereby 6 would be changed to read as follows: to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of up to $55,000 from the June 30 unreserved fund balance surplus available for transfer on July 1 of this year to be added to the previously established school facilities maintenance expendable trust. Everybody who supports that motion to amend, please raise your voting cards. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your voting cards. The vote in the negative, therefore the motion to amend does not carry, which brings us back to Article 6 as submitted by the school board. Discussion on Article 6. Hearing none, we'll bring it forward on Election Day. Now we move to 7, and this is a petition warrant article. It's treated the same as all the rest of the articles, subject to amendment, et cetera. We don't approve it. We just discuss it, put it in whatever state you wish it to be in for submission to the voters on voting day. Article 7 reads, to reflect the growth of Brookline and to help distribute the workload of the Brookline School Board, shall the Brookline School District change the number of members of the Brookline School Board from 5 to 7 members per RSA 671:4. The school board does not recommend this, Article 5-0. Is the petitioner here? Any of the petitioners here? Would you speak to your petition, please?
Yes, I'm one of the petitioners, Eric Power. This was discussed in town. There's a lot of people that want to serve on the Brookline School Board. I believe we have 4 candidates for 2 seats. I think we had 3 candidates for 2 seats, including, and then a write-in. There's more people that would want to serve. I've considered running, but there's a lot of people running. I know the school board is very busy. I served on the school board in the co-op. It had 7 members. That made it a little bit easier to do the workload and to do the right amount of oversight. So it makes sense. Brookline has grown. It makes sense to go to 7 members, and I think the voters can decide on that. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Discussion on the proposition.
Peter Walker, 57 Pepperell Road. What is the reason the school board is opposed to this change? Anybody?
I'm happy to speak to that. So I looked through all of southern New Hampshire. Milford School Board is at 5, Bedford School Board is at 5, Hollis's school board is at 5, Hudson is at 5, Amherst is at 5, Mont Vernon is at 5, Merrimack is at 5, and honestly, I stopped looking at that point. My reasoning beyond 5 is what the standard is to allow for the electorate to choose a candidate that they want, as opposed to people that come in and are not voted in, but just are open seats available, which then kind of dissolves the community's will at a time of throughout policy and budget and everything like that. So there's a term, we've probably heard it all, packing the Supreme Court. To me, this is a similar way where you have people that are only in seats because they were available, as opposed to going through the election process, having to campaign and having to talk about their views.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to add, to answer the question, that it also, on top of, I agree with what Ken says, it gets a little unwieldy. Speaking of what Marty was talking about, it took me a while to understand the fire panel issue, and it takes us all a while to understand adding 2 people unnecessarily just prolongs things, and it doesn't benefit. But more importantly, this petition warrant article seems an attempt to end run our right to vote in people, and just have people, if you want to come join us, and things get really unwieldy with more people. I know I've had to ask a ton of questions, other people have too, but with all the surrounding communities having similar numbers, it doesn't make sense.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jessica Hartman, Mountain Road, 51 Mountain Road. I just have a question about, first of all, I appreciate the fact that we have so many people volunteering and coming up on the ballot. I think that's wonderful. And so kudos to the community for stepping up and coming on. And hopefully those people who are on the ballot have come to all of the school board meetings this year and have been able to be a part of that and have a good understanding of what's going on in the district already. So that's a great thing. Where I question here is what happens on the years that we don't have enough people? So my question to, I think it's the board, is if for some reason we did go to 7 and then we had an open seat, what happens?
It makes it harder if you have 7 and you need a quorum. That would make it more difficult, just because you'd have an open seat that you would automatically count out. So if there was an immediate issue, that could create a problem.
I see that council's checking out. I'm sure there's a mechanism for appointing to fill a vacancy. I'm not sure what board does that, but...
And I will speak to my own experience on the board. I've run twice, and granted, this COVID has brought out a lot of people, which is awesome in terms of getting involved in their local government, but I ran unopposed twice over the last 6 years. And it was individuals in the community who were begging me to even run so that a name would be on the ballot.
Okay.
I know that there are open positions in town that we're constantly looking for people for. So I think my concern is, like, why are we increasing when there are opportunities? Okay, it's not the school board, but it's somewhere else. 2 of the board members, I included, are leaving this year. And I think it's fantastic that we have 4 people who are interested in the job.
Yeah.
I really do. But just opening it up more to more and more and more, I think it's not necessary. But that's my opinion. Everybody else can have their own opinion. That's the wonderful thing about them.
So it would probably be appointed if it was open? Okay. So based on that, I guess my feeling is I, as a legislative member, I would like to have a right in voting for who is on the board, and therefore I would be opposed to this warrant article, not because I don't feel like we should all contribute, but I would hate for anyone to have to appoint it. I think it'd be better if we kept 5 seats and really did our best to fill them and try to fill, I agree with Allison, some of the other positions in town. And you know, I need to do that and step up myself too, but I do appreciate the work that is done, and I think the way that it sits for now makes sense, so I would be opposed to Article 7.
Brady Halligan, 17 Birch Hill. Opposition to the article. It would make sense if we had 8 or 9, 10 people every year wanting to run for the school board. Yeah, we should probably have a few more members on it. We have 2 open seats and there's 4 candidates. Our town elections are nonpartisan, but do the math. And additionally, there are numerous open seats, open offices, folks running unopposed throughout our town government. So there are already numerous opportunities out there. I haven't been a member of a school board. I've been a union representative elected. It's a thankless job. Same with the school board. You get to stand up here and listen to us whine all night. Thankless job. Thank you all for all that you do. So, and there are school districts around us that have folks on their school boards that didn't have opposition to them, and frankly, in my opinion, hate public schools. There was a school district very near to us that very recently had a meeting that had national news attention on them for the proposals of a member that violated federal law. Member of the school board, nearby town. So it's very important to have quality of candidate, and too many members would dilute the quality of candidate and result in issues. So, opposition to the article. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Understand, we're not approving or disapproving this tonight. It's what's going forward to the voters on the 14th.
My name is Christine St. George, 13 Lorden Lane, and I've lived here for 26 years.
Sure you have.
And more often than not, there's so many, going to the ballot, there are more that are unopposed than people running against each other. Like someone said, they were begged to join, Finance committee, you're always looking for people. I think it's ridiculous, personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on...
Mr. Moderator?
Pardon? Yes, sir.
Can I just answer the question?
I'd be grateful, thank you.
Yeah. So school board vacancies in school districts are filled by the school board. The school board appoints until the next year's election.
Okay, so they fill the vacancy by appointment. No further discussion? Then the language is presented to the voters on the 14th as written in the petition warrant article number 7. Article 8, to prevent taxpayer dollars from funding lobbying against the interests of parents and citizens, shall the Brookline School District zero out budget line item dues? Wow. What's that next business? A petitioner? Is there a petitioner? Are you a petitioner? I'm confused by these numbers.
That's an account number line item in the budget. So there was the talk before, Americ Power, Westview Road. There was talk before, we have a bottom line budget. The school board can really move the money anywhere they want, except if an item is zeroed out by the legislative body, they cannot use money for that purpose.
I would respectfully disagree, sir.
It's in RSA.
It is indeed in RSA, and you have to eliminate the entire budget line. You can't just take a single item. It's a part of the statute which is virtually unreadable. It requires more than one statute in combination. You cannot just do a single line item. You can do a whole, what the statute says is that there's a budget form which is posted outside, which is submitted to the Department of Revenue Administration. And if you are proposing to zero out one of the lines on that form, and they're very encompassing. You can't just take one thing. You got to do the whole police department, not the no cruiser, or stop paying the chief. You got to take the whole police department out. So that principle, I would say, prevents you from binding them. They can still, as well as the selectmen, can still move stuff around, unless the only way to prevent that is by taking out what they call a purpose, which is one of these things on the budget form. So I'm quite confident. Council, am I full of baloney?
In general, for appropriations, I agree with you, but for this purpose, I think if you zero out a line item, completely zero out a line item that is for a purpose, then that's the no means no. You can't
I
school board
disagree with the
cannot
gentleman,
choose.
but obviously we have a disagreement.
Speaking to Article 8, the intent is to not spend money. This line item is actually used for the School Boards Association dues. And unfortunately, they commingle money that's used for training and other good purposes, and I've used them for that purpose, with lobbying money. And they use that together, and the only way the taxpayers can stop that, and there's been a bill up in Concord this session, I've testified for it, House Bill 51, talks about this whole process of lobbying and separating the funds. It's a very contentious issue, as you can imagine. But they said, you can always do a petition warrant article and zero out the line item. And I'm like, yes, I am. And that's what we're doing.
Yes,
So that's the
well,
purpose here.
Yeah. And let me also say the fundamental principle is if there's a petitioned issue, you guys have to address it, or actually on election day you have to address it, whether it's enforceable, whether it's legal, whatever it is. So it is what it is, and its enforceability is another day.
That's right. And, to put things on the warrant, you have to get a minimum of 25 citizens interested in this one. This one here actually came from some other folks I work with that wanted it. I supported it as well. So we also have a similar one in the co-op for the same purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hello, Tom Solon, Shady Rock Road. Eric did mention where this actually points, and it's called dues, but what it really is our membership for the entire SAU. We joined the New Hampshire School Board Association, which is an organization that does a number of things for all of the school boards. They provide, by being a member, and I believe our total cost is $5,500 for the year. It gets us webinars and in-person training. They manage all of our policies, both helping us have templates for policies and providing sourcing for it online. A big part of it is they provide, block his ears, free legal expenses, free legal advice for us. So as a school board member, we get more than our money's worth out of it. The lobbying aspect is that every year they have a delegate assembly which allows every member school board in New Hampshire, and membership is a paid thing, it's not an automatic thing, but every member school board can send a delegate to the delegate assembly, and they come up with an agenda that they would like the New Hampshire School Board Association to help support by testifying and providing advocacy in our state government. So that's the lobbying aspect. They don't come up with it on their own. They become our voice. They attend the hearings when we as school board members may not be able to attend. They testify, but the big part of it is the education. It's the legal support and the policy work. If this line gets zeroed out, it will cost us significant amounts of money in paid legal services, and we will have to hire out to manage all our policy work, as well as any training that we go to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir?
The gentleman ahead of me actually answered most of my questions. With that all said, the article reads to me as a union member something like, oh, we're trying to get rid of union dues or something like that. And it strikes me as something that the general voter that may not be fully educated on would automatically not support. And it sounds like not supporting it would actually result in a significant cost increase to the school district. Is there a way to modify the wording of these
It's called a motion to amend.
Okay.
These are amendable in any manner the people vote to amend. So you need to make a motion, and you need to make the language clear to me. And then
So let me think about it then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ed Perry, Muscatanabus. In opposition, just due to the fact that it's really vague in general. I mean, what is the interest of all parents and all citizens? How in the world would you ever square that circle, since so many people have so many different opinions and so many different interests? It's almost borderline dangerous because it's so overbroad and so general and so subjective that I can't even think of a way that you could amend it to make it make sense. Thanks.
So it will be on the ballot. Until and unless it's amended. Yes, ma'am.
Erin Saris, 15 Highview Drive. I don't know, I really haven't thought this through very well, but just to speak to clarity of the article, if it simply was amended to take out the sort of subjective language, to just say, to prevent taxpayer dollars from supporting the New Hampshire School Board Association services for school board members. I don't know. I haven't thought, I mean, with that, I guess I'm asking you, Mr. Moderator, if that is legitimate amendment language, or does it need to follow some sort of rule?
Yeah, well, you know, SB 2 is somewhat new to us, and I think the intricacies of it haven't been mastered by us. And this matter, this language, goes to the ballot and will be put on the ballot unless you folks amend this language. You have the right to amend it, just as they have had the right to amend the non-petition articles. So I can't give you any guidance on the words, but I'm just saying in principle,
Right.
you have that right.
I mean, I don't want to I mean, honestly, I think part of me doesn't want to legitimize this article because I think it's intentionally vague and deceitful. But at the same time,
She can say deceitful.
The speaker is disparaging a prior person.
No, she's, no, it's language.
Okay,
I was just...
Okay, hold. It's close. As long as we talk about the merits of the idea, we're fine, as opposed to talking about an individual. It was close.
Okay.
Move on.
So, yeah, I'm not going to, I don't have an amendment at this time, but just had some thoughts on that.
I have an amendment, but I need a point of clarification first. So the point of clarification is we need to know Jessica Hartman, 51 Mountain Road. I'm so sorry. To Tom's point earlier, what does it actually say instead of dues? Because in order to amend it to what Mr. Power is actually trying to say, it does just say dues? Because I have an amendment ready to go. But we need to know exactly what document, right, Mr. Power, we're talking about, and what the name is.
Jessica.
Do you know the document?
Jessica, do you want to look at my copy?
Yeah, I guess, right? So that we can be making sure we're not talking, it's the budget,
That's a line in our budget.
the budget
Yep,
line
and
item.
Yep.
Which refers to membership. Yeah, we want to say which, shall the Brookline School District zero out budget line item dues, like you said, which we want to add what you're saying, Tom, which,
Well, why don't you guys work away from the microphone?
is it okay if you give us a moment to do that?
Yes.
I think I know what that
But
was.
you have another person that may have an amendment. Why don't you get together?
Sure.
Okay.
I would like to propose the following amendment.
Okay, give it to me slowly.
Change the wording to say, to prevent taxpayer dollars from funding Brookline school districts, that's a apostrophe S, portion of SAU 41's membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association, and then pick up, shall the Brookline School District zero out, blah, blah, blah. So, do you want me to?
No, it's too vague for me. You need to write it down.
I did write it down.
You need to give it to me.
Okay, I'm just reading it.
Thank you. Okay, let me look at this. So, to prevent taxpayer dollars from funding Brookline's school district's portion of the SAU 41 membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association, okay, so, okay, why don't you tell the folks what your motion is?
To prevent taxpayer dollars from funding the Brookline School District's portion of the SAU 41 membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association, shall the Brookline School District zero out budget line item dues, and that's the numerical line of dues. Is that clear?
Yeah, makes sense.
So do you want me to write the whole thing?
I
out
would
for
be
you?
grateful, yes. Sure. Good. Yeah. Okay. So, in this SB2 world, the rules on amending articles, whether the petition articles are submitted by the school board, one of the rules is that you cannot eliminate the subject matter of the article. You cannot eliminate it. It's a fuzzy thing, and there's been several cases went to the Supreme Court on what was sufficient change to eliminate it. But if you're staying within the same subject matter of the article, you're not eliminating it. You can do what you want with it, but it's just got to be germane, in my opinion, to the subject matter contained and addressed in the article. You can't eliminate it. They suggest don't put in no or do not do this. Why, I'm not sure. I think because it's going to be a yes-no proposition on the ballot, and if it says we should not do this, is that a yes or is that a no? So it leads to mischief. So just understand that you can tweak it how you want. You just can't eliminate the subject. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you can't you can't eliminate the purpose. And we're in the gray area, I think, here, because the petitioners put this forward because of the lobbying, and now we're removing that word against the interests of parents and citizens. That is subjective. That could be removed. But if you leave out the lobbying, I think that's definitely in a gray area, because that's the purpose of this warrant article. So,
yeah, that's tough, Eric.
So that's what I'm just bringing up, because
Yeah, do you want to?
they've tweaked the SB2 system many times to fix this sort of thing, so you have to keep the lobbying word in there, I think, just to keep the intent. And otherwise, it's changing the subject matter.
Your
away.
subject matter could arguably be the elimination of the budget item titled dues.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, we're in a
Hey,
very gray area here. I would prefer to have lobbying left in there, but that's my perspective on
I
it.
respectfully would say that one could also say that it is the reference to zeroing out dues is your objective for whatever incidental or interpretive motivation you might have in your heart. Yes.
Hi, Tom Rogers, Lewis Drive. So everything in the beginning of this is subjective, as mentioned, but the only objective thing is the actual line item of the budget. So we're not changing, the line item of the budget is mentioned in this article, so I don't think the change that Mr. Solon proposed is against the
The original proposition.
intent or purpose of this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been, the dues line item wouldn't have been mentioned.
Thank you. We haven't gotten a second for any, well, it's still in works. Yeah. Yes, sir, why don't you?
Yeah, I would say similar. If we got rid of dues, I think Mr. Power would have a point that if we got rid of dues, but the first half of the sentence is a qualifying sentence. Hello, my dear. Yes, I know. So, the first half of the sentence is a qualification, if you will. It's a preamble. The text, what's actually being changed, the point of the amendment really starts with shall. You could simply lop off the first half of the sentence, make the article read, shall the Brookline School District zero budget line item dues, and you've gotten rid of basically everything and not changed anything. You've simply removed a justification that one side is presenting that is one argument. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Young lady, thank you for your help. Yes.
Beth Gilday, 22 Ames Road. I just want to say that I think it's really important that we're clear in these petition warrant articles about what it is that we are actually voting on. When I read this, I had no idea what the lobbying group was that these dues were. And getting here, hearing that it's supporting training, legal, all that for our school board, it's very frustrating as a voter to sit in the voting booth and not really understand the language of an article. And this is a prime example of why. So I am in favor of the amendment that is being proposed. So I just want to say, I think clarity is really important for our voters.
I appreciate that. And just understand this petition article, the way it works is any 25 people in town, you can write out any proposition you want. And if you get 25 voters to sign off, it's got to go on the warrant. So we're kind of at the mercy of that process. If it's poorly stated, it can be improved, but it can't be changed.
This would be this is what I read without this. This is.
Yeah, why don't you tell the people?
No, it's the same thing. Please bear with me. I'm trying to bridge the gap. What I had originally said was to prevent taxpayer dollars from funding the Brookline School District's portion of the SAU 41's membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association, shall the Brookline School District zero out budget line items dues 10.2310, 810.000. With the statement that Eric made, a potential alternate would be to prevent taxpayer dollars from lobbying through funding of the school district's portion. The idea being adding the lobbying through to retain that intent of the original article, to me is a potential compromise if people would prefer to have that version. I don't know order-wise how to do it. We had, the original one was offered and seconded. I don't know if you have to go through that first and then perhaps propose an amendment to it.
One moment, folks, sorry.
What you first proposed,
So the opinion is that the original offered amendment is legal. The question is whether it's what you want. Should we put it for a vote? Without this word.
Okay.
So,
there's no second to a motion that hasn't been written yet to begin with. There's no second to a motion which hasn't been written yet.
Which one?
You were speaking of this motion having been previously seconded. You've been working on it and changing it. All right, well, you guys... No, the deal is we haven't heard it yet. You can't second something. So Apparently, the motion to amend would change this entire article to the following language. Is that correct so far?
So, point of
Okay.
order, just a question.
Pardon me?
The original amendment that he proposed
Yes.
was seconded,
I
right?
I honestly don't recall. Okay.
Yes, right? I think there was a second to the original amendment back there.
What did his original motion say? If you,
Do you have the original
No,
card
it was
that you
not.
presented the first time? Okay.
it's what? Oh, you had a little card. Okay, so I'm beginning to understand. You're saying that your motion, which was already seconded, was to prevent taxpayer dollars from funding the Brookline School District's portion of the SAU 41's membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association. Shall the Brookline School District zero out budget lines, quote, dues, and then the numbers that follow? So, all you're doing is changing the rationale for the same action.
Same action with a different preamble.
Okay. And that was seconded?
It was seconded. I seconded it, a couple other people did as well.
All right, so it's up for discussion. This amendment to Article 8 as the petitioners drafted it.
Yep.
Go for it.
So
Does anyone want to speak to?
I wanted to speak to that. Yes, I seconded that.
Okay, oh, thank you very much. Okay. Come on, you guys. There are many great minds out there. We need a little clarity here. I'm grateful, sir. Thank you.
So, Mark Christensen, Flint Meadow Drive. This amendment rips out the purpose. It's like going into the Constitution and ripping out the part about it's to preserve the liberty of the people. This is kind of a legal thing. It's, what changes are possible, but it completely rips out the purpose. Now, we had a compromise one that left the purpose in to take out, that included the lobbying that happened through this organization. I thought that was an improvement because it was clearer, but I'm not sure if that's relevant at this point.
Yeah, go to the mic.
Because I made the motion without those words, and it was seconded, I was of the impression that we had to vote on that first, and then there would be the opportunity to potentially amend it to add the extra two word, the lobbying into it beyond. I just don't know.
We're pretty far afield on process.
I don't know procedurally whether what the will is of this body, and that's what I'm held captive to. I don't care one way or the other. I was trying to capture the sentiment in language, not advocate.
Okay. Now it's clear to you guys? We're talking about the motion, which has been seconded, which is what I read.
Microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
Jessica Hartman, 51 Mountain Road. I am in favor of the amendment to the article because I think it lends some clarity to what dues means and gets us away from some of that idea of could it have to do with.
You're taking all of the money out for whatever purpose it might be.
Correct. I like the clarity added about, though, that it refers directly to the school board. The SAU's dues for the school board and not dues like for teachers, unions, and that kind of thing. So I agree with you, Mr. Power. I apologize that I see clearly that it's exactly the right language. I do appreciate the amendment adding clarity to what the dues refer to. So that's all.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion to amend? The motion to amend would change the language of Article 8 to read, to prevent tax dollars from funding the Brookline School District's portion of the SAU 41's membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association, shall the Brookline School District zero out budget line items dues with that number after it? Any further discussion on that? All those in favor, raise your voting card. All those opposed, raise your voting card. It's a vote in the affirmative. The amendment, therefore, to Article 8 as written carries. And again, it reads, to prevent taxpayer dollars from funding the Brookline School District's portion of the SAU's membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association, shall the Brookline School District zero out budget line items titled dues. That's where we are at the moment, sir.
Tom Rogers, Lewis Drive. It's getting late in the night. We're starting to lose people, and I see that the next one isn't budget related. Can I make a motion to limit reconsideration of all previous articles?
Yes, you may.
So moved.
Do we have a second? We have seconds all over the place. All those in favor of no reconsideration, raise your voting card. In SB2, it ends it for all. It cannot, never happen. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration, raise your voting card. Thank you. All opposed to doing so, raise your voting card. Thank you. It's a vote in the affirmative. All your decisions this evening, therefore, cannot be reconsidered so far, although we have one more to go. And we have to vote once and for all on this amended version of Article 8. Sir.
So are you going to, the second version that he proposed, are we going to vote on that one now?
We have, yeah.
I make a motion to amend on that second version. That,
Okay, amend
that includes the lobbying
Right,
word.
so let's pause. Okay, so we have this present version of Article 8, and the gentleman is saying, I'd like to make a motion to amend.
That's
which he can do.
It's not under reconsideration.
No.
We haven't moved forward yet.
I don't think we're voting on the acceptability of this, except as an amendment to the primary motion. Do you agree with me? Not sure. It is my position. You guys are in charge here. You can outvote me on any decision I make. That's your job. My understanding is what we agreed to do is to change Article 8 to this new language, not to, well, I mean, we can't approve, someone said that anyway.
But we weren't finished with it yet.
Excuse me?
We're not finished with 8. We are finished 1 through 7.
Agreed. Agreed. Discussion is still going on Article 8. Somebody has made an amendment to it. You guys liked it, that's where it is, but it's not in stone. It doesn't end discussion. And we have not moved on, so is that...
Make the motion for the second version that Mr. Solon had that includes the words "the lobbying" in for Article 8.
With those two words. Okay, so we have, you guys did change the status, the language of Article 8. Now we have another request to change it in a different way. And this new motion, which the gentleman is suggesting we should change Article 8 even further to, is to read, to prevent taxpayer dollars from lobbying through funding the school district's portion of the SAU 41's membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association shall the Brookline School District zero out budget line items titled dues. So he's adding the words lobbying.
Just want to clarify the name of the school board. It's school boards with a plural association.
Makes sense to me. I'm going to take the liberty of making
Apostrophe
that
S.
correction. School boards plural.
Apostrophe S.
It's plural possessive or singular possessive? Singular possessive. The New Hampshire school, oh, there's one, okay, gotcha. School boards, so thank you, okay, fine. Sorry, you guys, it's not usually as painful. This SAU thing is for the birds. Okay. The gentleman has made a proposal to change the language by adding that lobbying through. Is there a second for the gentleman's motion? There's a second. Is there discussion on the gentleman's next motion to amend? There is not. So the question before you is, no, you can't approve this. Yes, this is a motion to, we have to support or not this motion to amend. If you are in favor of having this thing read, to prevent taxpayer dollars from lobbying through funding the Brookline School District's portion of the SAU 41's membership in the New Hampshire School Boards Association. Got that right? New Hampshire School Boards Association? So take it. Plural. School, not possessive. Okay. Shall we zero out dues? So that's where we are at the moment. Do people want to make that change that has been proposed? All those in favor of making that change, raise your voting card. Thank you. All opposed, raise your voting card. Despite all of our hard work, Eric, we just got shut down. Okay. So we're back to Tom's version without lobbying through. That's the current state of Article 8 for your consideration, which will read, to prevent taxpayer dollars from funding the Brookline School District's portion of the SAU 41's membership in the New Hampshire School Board Association, shall the Brookline School District zero out budget line items dues with those numbers after it. That's where we are. Do you want to leave it that way and have it go that way in the ballot? Or is there an interest in another amendment? I'm so glad. Okay. Then that's the way it will go. Now, is someone acting as clerk? Are you going to take it from the recording? Because here's a piece of paper that shows what we've been talking about. Your person who's going to write your minutes is going to want this. Okay, moving on to Article 9. And I am delighted to report this is the last one. To reduce the Brookline property tax burden, shall the Brookline School District rescind authorization under RSA 198:4-B, Roman numeral 2, so that the Brookline School District no longer retains any unassigned general funds under RSA 198:4B2. School Board doesn't recommend 3-0. Finance doesn't recommend 3-0. What would you like? Is it, you've got, do you have another proponent who could speak to your?
Eric Power, Westview Road. I noticed the top of the warrant might have a typographical error. It says there's warrant articles 1 through 8, and there's really articles 1 through 9 in this, because this is the 9th one, so we probably want to fix that when the new warrant is published. And while I'm thinking about it, and also in this warrant article 9, there should be a space between the B and the Roman numeral 2 in the first mentioning, like it is in the second one. This article, we've had this in previous years. This is an article that allows the school board to retain, and it's a number that we chose. I believe it's 2%, or is it 2.5%? 2% right now. That when this unfunded unreserved fund balance that we talked about earlier, after they fund any of the trust funds that require that, they can keep another 2% of the budget and not return it to taxpayers. And this is rescinding that authority so that they return all of that funding. After they fund any trust funds, it all gets returned to the taxpayers to help reduce the tax burden. That's the goal of this. It's a pretty straightforward statutory language for the RSA.
Thank you, sir. Discussion.
I have a motion to amend the language to simply strike through the first 7 words and have the article start at shall the Brookline School District rescind authorization under RSA 198.4B2 so the Brookline School District no longer retains any assigned general fund balance under RSA 198.4B2.
So that's a motion to amend, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second to the gentleman's motion to amend? There is. Discussion on his motion to amend. Sir, why don't you speak to your motion to amend? Why? What?
So, kind of like we were discussing with the last article, it's a qualifying statement that is intended to sway it reads to me like it's intended to sway opinion in how it's written. So it simply eliminates the qualifying statement and presents the article as a straightforward statement. Any reasonable person reading it would understand exactly what it means, and it would make the resulting vote more clear, in my opinion.
Thank you. Discussion on the gentleman's motion to amend.
Peter Walker, 57 Pepperell Road. Question for the chair of the Finance Committee. I see the Finance Committee opposed the petition warrant article. Would this, if enacted, put some downward pressure on the tax burden in Brookline?
Sir, I got to deal with the motion to amend before we get into the merits of the thing as originally proposed. Peter, I'm missing it then. Help me. What is your question of the finance?
Would this, either as originally drafted or as the proposed amendment, would this put some downward pressure on the tax burden within Brookline?
That's not, no, I'm not going to permit it. We're going to act on the motion to amend before a perfectly legitimate point, and I don't know the answer, and we'll get the answer, but the gentleman's motion precedes you. I need to have people speak to eliminating that language. Or not.
Tom Solon, Shady Rock Road. Irrespective of my position on the warrant article itself, I'm opposed. Excuse me. I'm opposed to the amendment because, like it or not, that really is the effect and impact of doing it. If someone wanted to say something else about what else it does, that's fine, but stripping out those 5 words really does deprive people of knowing what happens. If someone has not attended these meetings and they were to just read, shall the Brookline School District, blah, 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 they would have zero understanding. The article as stands is an accurate statement of what the impact would be. There are other repercussions as well, but I am opposed to taking those words out.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mine will be short. Mark Andrews, 35 West Hill. I echo his comments. It weakens the overall intent of Article 9 as written.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Brendan Dennehy, 31 Mason Road. I think clarification is that it's actually a 2-step process, that money that comes back from the Brookline School Board goes into the town of Brookline's unassigned fund balance. And then it is up to the select board to determine whether that money is used to offset taxes.
The funds?
The funds go into the Brookline's unassigned fund balance, the town of Brookline.
Oh, just a sec. Let me work with that for a sec.
If there weren't.
Tell me again. I'm not following.
So Brendan, do you mean if there was no unreserved fund balance at the school district, like if that was
correct,
not existent? Before we had that in 2018, what happened with any unused funds is it went to the select board and they determined how it was used?
Went to the town of Brookline, not the select board.
Right,
but the select board are the agents to determine how the unassigned fund balance is used, whether to offset taxes or not.
Okay.
So the money goes into the general revenues, the general fund of the town, since it's not being segregated in this fund.
Correct.
Okay.
I would like to ask, if I may, Kelly to address that, because I see you're in disagreement with that statement.
That makes sense to me, I have to say. Eric, you agree, don't you?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think the statement's very explanatory. It's not really trying to sway voters, it's just telling you what the article is doing. So I recommend that we defeat this amendment because I think it's explanatory and people just talked about being in the ballot booth, wanting to know what it does. And that's what it does.
Can I speak, Peter?
Of course you may, thank you.
Allison Marsano, 30 Laurel Crest. So I would agree that, yes, it does clarify the property tax burden, but I think it also leaves out the part that then we would no longer have any fund in which to go to. We used to have the fund set up so that if we had any catastrophic kind of issue come up, we'd be able to pay for that. We got rid of that when we voted for the unassigned fund balance 2%. And by taking that away, we're like not telling them that there will be nothing available for us. So I feel like this is kind of like, I'm okay with leaving the property tax burden part in as long as we put, and there will be no catastrophic fund for the school board to address when we do this, because that would also be accurate, that we no longer have funding available. So I guess I'm no to the amendment, but
You can take it from after we've disposed of that. Let's say further discussion, thank you, Allison. Further discussion on the gentleman's amendment to take out that first clause.
Jill Aitken, Potanipo Hill Road. I'm just trying to get clarification myself. If we eliminate the unassigned general funds, am I correct in understanding that those unassigned general funds would then go to the town's funds, and then the select board of the town would determine where they go? No.
Yeah, that's what was said,
Seems
but
you
I'm
can
not
answer.
sure that's accurate.
That's not accurate?
Yeah. I think there's less revenues that need to be taken from the people, so the taxes are lower if we're eliminating this cushion.
So in other words, your understanding is that if we eliminated the unassigned general funds, that the money would automatically go back to the taxpayer?
Or they wouldn't be asked for it in the first place, because we wouldn't be augmenting our school budget with funds in hopes of having this surplus.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It lowers the taxes.
I mean, I understood the intent of the original article, but I just wanted to understand what would happen, what all the ramifications were. Okay.
It's just that my belief is that the school board needs less money as a result, so there's less taxes asked of the taxpayers.
Right. I mean, I think we have more to discuss as far as where that would then leave the school board, but for the moment, I know we're talking about the amendment, so I will just leave it there. Thanks.
Okay, so the amendment is, again, to change Article 9 so as to eliminate the language before the comma, that language being to reduce the Brookline property tax burden. Any further discussion on the motion to amend? Let's put to a vote. Who is in favor of the motion to amend? Raise your voting card. Thank you. Who's opposed? Raise your voting card. Thank you. So we won't make that amendment. Continue discussion until we're done on Article 9. Yes, sir.
Peter Walker, 57 Pepperell Road. If I may field my original question to the chair of the Finance Committee, would this change, if enacted, put downward pressure on property taxes in Brookline?
Sooner, depending on the mechanism, sooner or later it would help to reduce the tax rate over time.
Okay, so the Finance Committee was opposed. Why is that not a desirable goal?
So the issue is the other part of this that isn't discussed in the warrant article, which is that this is the school's contingency fund for dealing with significant emergencies. So it leaves the school at significant vulnerability if emergencies come up and they don't have this fund to be able to pull into. So that was why we had opposed it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add to, so anything in the unreserved fund balance, for everyone's awareness, would require a public hearing that we would, as a board, have to approve. So this isn't just money that's available and immediately used behind closed doors. So I just want to make sure that's understood too.
And I just wanted to speak against this as well. We've spent a good part of this evening talking about using the unreserved fund balance to fund our needs in the pursuit of not raising taxes. And so to the Finance Committee's point, Mr. Rader's point, we would end up, I think, having emergency meetings every time an unexpected expenditure came up, and every time there's a line item in here for like annual meetings, which obviously take into account voting machines, et cetera, but there's an expense to the town and the district whenever we have to hold a special meeting. Not to mention the fact that if a boiler goes and you need to replace a boiler in the middle of the winter, and you have to hold a meeting to secure funding for that emergency expenditure, that means school is canceled, it means children are in school, which means parents can't work, which means people don't have summer, which means we have learning delays. I mean, it snowballs. There are consequences. So I just find it ironic that we've been talking about using the unexpended fund balance to shore up budget shortfalls and to keep the tax burden low, and now we want to get rid of the unreserved fund balance. I think that this is short-sighted.
Thank you. Sir?
Ed Perry, Muscatanapus. So so that we can understand it a little bit further, if you don't have a fund anymore and something were to happen, how does that play out? We're going to end up having an emergency meeting.
Yep.
And at that point, would there be some form of request to find the funding? Because the emergency wouldn't go away, right?
That's correct.
So in the interest of honesty, maybe the amendment is to potentially reduce the Brookline property tax burden. I don't like this business of making people promises that we're not necessarily going to be able to fulfill. I don't want people to go in, vote for something, thinking that this is a guarantee they're going to reduce their property tax burden, and then finding out that they cost themselves money later on. This is a bit of a common theme with these types of petition warrants. The devil being in the details. So maybe it would be something to the effect of to potentially reduce the Brookline property tax burden. I don't know, let's see. But creating a potential liability as there would no longer be a fund to draw from, shall the Brookline School District rescind authorization under RSA? Maybe that would be a little bit more balanced, and it would allow people to consider that, yes, potentially I might reduce my tax burden, but I might also be creating a liability. In the interest of making sure everybody understands it, that might be the most fair amendment, so I guess maybe I will make that. That's my amendment. Yeah.
Sorry, can we have 1 second?
Take your time, and I hope you're writing down whatever it was he said.
Less than 3. Don't count.
All right, well, they're kibitzing. Let's see, I've got this, I don't know, his 5-year-old grandson, and he's got all these jokes. How he remembers, he can't understand them. A 5-year-old kid says, what do you call an inn that smells bad? An instinct. How can he know what instinct? Anyhow, yes, sir.
As happens rather often, someone has a better idea than me, and I like her language, so I'd like to allow her to make the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jill Aitken, Botanical Hill Road. I'd like to propose an amendment to Article 9 with the following language. To potentially reduce, and the rest is the same, but I'll read it just to potentially reduce the Brookline property tax burden, shall the Brookline School District rescind authorization under RSA 198:4B2 so that the Brookline School District no longer retains any unassigned general funds under RSA 198:4B2, thereby leaving the school board without a contingency fund for unexpected expenditures.
Is there a second to that? A second. Thereby take me from...
Yeah, sorry. So at the end, so potentially, so after 2 at the beginning, it's
Put
potentially.
potentially in there, yeah.
And then at the end, right before the question mark, you just have comma, thereby leaving the school board without a contingency fund for unexpected expenditures.
For unexpected expenditures?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Thereby leaving the school board without a contingency fund for unexpected expenses.
Expenditures. Yeah.
Expenditures.
Mhm.
Expenditures. Okay, so you've heard it. Is there a second? Did I do this already? Yes, there's a second. Okay, discussion on this particular
Can I
motion.
just say one thing in support
Oh, I
of it?
would ask you to.
Okay, thank you. So I just feel like that retains the integrity of the original article while also further explaining what the ramifications would be, because I think it's important that people at the polls understand if I vote this way for this, this would happen. If I vote that way for this, that would happen. I just want people to understand the ramifications of their yes or no on the article, just so they can make an informed decision.
Got it.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Diane Power, Westview Road. My question is for the school board. I'd like to know how many trust funds the Brookline School District currently has and what the funding levels are and what these trust funds are used for.
Forgive me, Diane, but we're on a motion to amend, and the merits of that motion to amend your points on the general issue is wonderful, but I just got to get rid of this motion to amend first. I'm sorry. I need people to speak to the gentlewoman's motion to amend. Go ahead.
Well, the point that I was driving at is there was a comment that was made that this article would eliminate contingency funds. And my point is that it's my understanding that the Brookline School District currently does in fact have funds, trust funds, for various purposes funded at various levels currently for the purposes of unexpected expenses. So I'd like the school board to address that, to
So you're speaking
enumerate the
against
number of funds.
You're speaking against the amendment for these reasons that there are
Correct.
funds. Pardon me?
Yes.
Yes.
There are 2 trust funds. One is special ed, and it's limited to only unexpected special ed items. And the second one is the maintenance trust, which we went over tonight, where you provided the beginning balance, the goal of what we'd like to fund, and what we predict is the ending balance, as well as the items we'd be purchasing. Those are the only 2 trust funds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Brian Rader, have not moved from 31 Mason Road when I was up here last.
But you're only going to talk about the amendment.
But I'm only going to talk about the amendment. A couple of things. One is the use of the word contingency in there. In state law, there is a provision specifically for a contingency fund, which is not what this is. It's a completely separate mechanism for it. It could potentially mislead somebody, although it probably just me and other members of the finance committee and the school board would know about that. The other issue I was going to bring up was exactly the issue that Diane did. There are a couple of other funds out there, the special education fund, the maintenance fund. They are for specific purposes, but there are additional places we can go for those specific purposes. So it's not completely eliminating all contingencies from the schools.
Thank you. So is that in support or opposition? Or are you just enlightening us?
Clarification in the middle, a little bit of opposition.
He's wimping out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Eric Power, Westview Road. I speak in opposition to this amendment because I think it's a little bit deceptive. The word contingency fund is actually in RSA, and it's a different animal than what we have. We do have a contingency fund. We've had them in the co-op. I don't think we've ever had the official contingency fund. So it's really a misnomer by saying it. So I recommend voting against this amendment to avoid confusion, legal confusion.
We did have a contingency fund.
Yeah. well,
Not anymore, but we did have one prior.
Yeah. Go for it. Yes, sir.
Mark Andrews, West Hill, or 35 West Hill. I am specifically in opposition to the last clause after the comma, prior to that question mark, after the two. Every single one of these warrants up until this point discuss the what, not the why. The effect, as we just discussed, is somewhat subjective, and if as written, potentially misleading.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Tom Rogers, Lewis Drive, in support, speaking in support of the amendment. I think it clarifies on the front end and the back end, and it makes it easier for people to understand both the purpose and the potential outcome.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion on the motion to amend? The motion to amend would have this article read, to potentially reduce the Brookline property tax burden, shall the Brookline School District rescind authorization under RSA 198:4B2, so that the Brookline School District no longer retains any unassigned general funds under RSA 198:4B2. Is this a new sentence or who's, comma? The school thereby leaving the school board leaving the school board without a contingency fund for unexpected expenditures. Did you get that? I hope so. All those in favor of that motion to amend, raise your voting card. Thank you. All those raise your voting card. I think we're going to vote. I think it's clear, but let's vote anyhow. So all those in favor, raise your voting card. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Okay, and all those against it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Okay, and all those Okay, so the amendment it has been approved.
You had two more.
Ups, shiest. Okay. Okay, so let's do it again.
It's 29 to 15.
All those
So it should be 15 if it goes.
Wait, are
Yeah,
you
15.
opposed? No, it doesn't matter.
Same outcome. Sorry.
Did you get those guys?
14 to 29. So the Article 9 stands as amended by the gentlewoman. Further discussion? Okay. Then
I do have a question. From a legal perspective, is that word contingency a concern at all? That's my only hesitation to just.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The question around contingency, that word, does that open up any potential liability or concerns with that word in that warrant right now?
I wouldn't say liability. I mean, I think Mr. Rader and Mr. Power both brought up the point that contingency fund is different from these, these kept funds.
It is indeed true. My position would be that the word contingency is a word in common parlance. The fact that it happens to be used to identify an esoteric thing doesn't mean its common use is voided. Okay.
Okay.
So, did I talk you into it?
I don't know. I just want to make sure we're clear.
Okay, guys, any more discussion on Article 9? If not, your work is done, and we get to see you. There's a motion to adjourn. Anybody want to? Let's amend that motion.